Hello there everyone, how you doing today? I hope you're all well. Today we've got a compilation of a lot of entitled people stories I have read over many months. I don't know how long this will end up, but it'll probably end up in the thumbnail or something, so refer to that if you want to know how long it is. If you enjoy, like and subscribe, and leave a comment down below. Now, let's get started, shall we? Junkie crashing on my couch for 2 weeks. So, this story takes place in 2019, before the pandemic. I worked at a dispensary for 5 years. The business closed after financial hardship. At the time, I had a job at a recycling plant doing cleanup. I was making about $300 a week. One day, out of the blue, the owner of that said dispensary called me and said he wanted to come over. He didn't tell me he was on the streets and had no place to sleep. He announced he was going to sleep on my couch until he found a place. I thought, sure, why not? Conveniently, he came 2 days after Welfare Day. Shortly after getting settled in my bachelor's apartment, he made demands. He had a big bag of weed, although he would only let me smoke it on his terms. He then asked me for money since it was a couple of days after Welfare Day. I told him I had paid another weed dealer a debt I owed him. He decided to confront this dude, a wannabe biker who drives a moped BTW. This biker came back to my apartment and gave me poo, but that's a different story. I now had to rely on this druggie who moved into my apartment for weed. He told me he owed money for that bag of weed he bought over, and that I somehow owed some guy I never met $100 for the weed he bought. I told him no, he can't have it. He said to me, "How can you do this to me? I gave you weed, now pay up." First of all, I didn't ask you to give me weed. You just showed up with it. Second, I never met this guy, so how can I owe him money? I told him I would see what I could do. Over the course of 2 weeks, he stayed in my apartment. He would borrow money from me and not pay it back. He said he had neuropathy and needed $40 to buy heroin to kill the pain. I said, no, I'm not buying you drugs. He then told me it would be my fault he was in pain because I wouldn't give him money. So I gave him the money. He would ask me for money every single day, even going as far to call me selfish for buying cigarettes and alcohol with the money I worked hard for. One day he decided to, quote-unquote, confront me. He told me I had a job, a disability pension, and I was supported by a non-profit for food and clothes. He told me I was selfishly spending all that money on myself. He thought he had some claim to my money. He would get upset at me if I bought myself a Starbucks dark roast, because that $3 I could have spent on him. He told me I was not a good friend because I wasn't giving him more money. He guilted me, and I said I would give him $100 next payday. And now he was bumming money from his other friends. He didn't pay me back all that money I lent him. He would use my bank to cash e-transfers. It's a money-sending service in Canada. He yelled at me when I asked for my money back, saying he let me smoke his weed. He would only give me half a gram when he felt like it. He told me it was his weed and I could only smoke it when he felt like it. About 3 days in, he completely drained me. $40 a day for heroin would do that. He then told me it was my responsibility to come up with a way to get him heroin. He told me to make a sign, stand on a street corner and beg for money, and give him the proceeds. At first I refused, but then he accused me of not caring about him. He went running to the bathroom crying and locked himself in, and he successfully guilt-tripped me into reminding me he was in pain. So I went to the street corner and begged for change. He literally shook me down, making sure I didn't keep any money for myself, because that would be selfish. At this point, I told him to pack his stuff and leave. He told me he is not leaving. He told me if I called the police to have him removed, I'd be the one going to jail because he wouldn't be housed, and he said he had a right to stay with me. I should have just called the police. So this went on for 2 weeks. One day he locked me out of my own house and said I wasn't allowed back until I bought money for him. He did several things that put my housing at risk. He told me I had to risk my housing because it would be worth it if it meant he could stay there a few days. And then we would just be homeless together. After 2 weeks of grinding me for $40 a day by reminding me he was in pain, my building manager evicted him. He told him he did nothing wrong and gave me a look that I did something wrong for not defending him or begging him to stay. He then called the next day, told me he was pissed off at me for letting him be evicted, and demanded yet another $100 or he would withdraw his friendship. I told him that was fine, and I never saw him again. There was evidence to suggest he was doing other drugs as well. There were crack pipes and bath salts in the bathroom. He told me he should be my number one priority the whole time he was there. I had other expenditures, but he told me I didn't have to pay my personal trainer, or I should skip a credit card payment because he was in pain. I should have kicked him out way earlier than I did. I have no intention of ever talking to this person again in my life. He knew I had weak boundaries. I since then have not cared about other people's problems. If it isn't my problem, I'm not going to make it my problem. I won't let people stay at my house anymore, because I refuse to be taken advantage of again like that. I should have gotten rid of him earlier, but from now on, I won't let somebody take advantage of me like that ever again. I will never lend money to anyone ever again. What did I learn? Don't trust a junkie. Well, that was a wild ride. Anyway, on to the next story. We can go through that whole song and dance, or you can just give me an extra $100 off. So, bit of background. I work at a call center doing customer service for e-commerce, arm of a large chain of warehouse stores. Among many, many other things, we sell appliances. We have very frequent sales. Lately, I presume, because marketing has a vested interest in ruining customer service's day. We've been doing a lot of sales that hinge on the customer spending a certain amount of qualifying items in one purchase, or buying a certain quantity of qualifying items. Naturally, most calls pertaining to these sales are along the lines of, if I had known this promo was going on, I would have bought these in the same order. Can you do anything? Or, I bought these items, and the next day that sale started. Can you do anything? And these calls are not what this post is about. We have a pretty forgiving price adjustment policy in place for handling them. And it's no wonder they're common. After all, these are great deals. But for some people, they're just not good enough. Picture this, it's 7:30ish, near the end of my shift, but not near enough for me to get excited yet. A call comes in. I give my thank you for calling spiel and ask the customer how can I help today. She says she's thinking of buying a few things, but she has some questions. She gives the item numbers she wants, and their appliances, so I'm mentally queuing up my answers about installation. It's included, and we provide the kits. The return policy. It's 90 days, but we have a warranty department that covers the unit for 2 years. And extended warranties. We do offer them. She then mentions the items she's buying qualify for both the spend $2,000 get $300 off promo and the buy two get $100 off promo, and starts talking about how much each item costs. So the fridge is over $2,000 and the washer and dryer is $1,600. So it's almost $2,000. I'm not sure where she's going with this, but I'm still assuming it's a normal destination. Then she takes a left so hard it practically snaps my neck. So, can I get 300 per item instead of 300 off total? Or can I just buy these on separate orders and get $300 for each of them? She was getting an extra $100 on this order because she was buying 2 appliances. Also, her reasoning was because her total was almost 4,000, which is not how spend get promos work. I've already located her in our records, just in case she had some recent delivery or something that she was expecting compensation for. Customers are usually aggressively forthcoming with this information, but it never hurts to check. Last call was in December of last year, and appears to have been resolved per the call's notes. And I try to tell her as gingerly as possible, that's not really how promotion works here. You can absolutely place them as 2 orders, but they both need to be $2,000 or more. Can I buy something that's $400 at the washer and dryer to get the promo, and then return it? You can, but you'd lose part of the credit, since it's applied to the whole order and not a specific item. The system spits out the amount between the items on the order. It would be a relatively small portion, but you wouldn't get the full credit. Then can you just give me another $100 out the full order? I naively think she hasn't noticed the discount amount on her order or something. It's more common than you think. Oh, you're already getting an extra $100 off. These items also qualify for the Buy More, Save More promo, so you'd actually get $400 off if you ordered them both. No, I want an extra $100 off. Scenario 1. I placed 2 orders, one with the fridge, and then one with the washer and dryer, plus a vacuum or something. And then I return the vacuum and get most of the credit back. Scenario 2. You just give me $100 off and we skip that whole dance. Scenario 3. I'm not beholden to your false ultimatums and will not give you an extra discount on your already discounted order that you have not even placed yet, just because you think you should get it. I make a show of asking my team, and I drop a message in the group chat saying, I am an absolute lost man. I have no idea how to tell this customer we can't give her an extra $100 off her order that qualifies for both our ongoing promos. And my supervisor gives me the requisite, I asked my mom and she said no card to play. I apologize, ma'am, but I just spoke to my team and we were not able to discount this order any further. Okay, I'll see if I can get this at insert competing business here. Then, they price match plus 10%, you know. I resist the urge to tell her that they can afford to do that because they charge extra for installation. She asks me if I can get her an earlier delivery date on an item she has not ordered yet. I tell her that we're not able to formally expedite appliance deliveries, but that the item ships directly from a distribution center, and depending on when it reaches the delivery facility, we might be able to get it to her earlier than the site estimates. Anyway, she hangs up on me. I tell my supervisor that she threatened to go to a competitor and got a "she can do that, lol" in response. I wonder how often this strategy works for her. Anyways, the moral of the story is, don't work in customer service. You got that right, OP. Once I worked at Walmart and I got PTSD from that. I can only imagine how bad it is from a call center. Woman was crying that she didn't get to take my sister's kid. So, for context, my sister's ex-boyfriend, we'll call him NB for nice brother, and father of her child, recently passed away a couple years ago. And this story takes place at the funeral. Our family was very close given that he was the father of my niece, and even though they broke up and my sister got married to someone else, we all cared for and valued him a lot. So now the entitled person. At the funeral, we were all sitting down when all of a sudden this lady pops up, runs to the casket that was about to be lowered, and starts bawling. Not weird at this point, a lot of people were crying. But she was screaming. I didn't question it too much, but I find it a little odd since I'd never seen her before. Fast forward to later in the funeral. The ceremony was done and we were all talking. Me and my other sister, not the one who dated NB, and the sister of NB were all talking. I'm good friends with NB's sisters since we're the same age and have the same interest. This will be important later. All of a sudden we hear EL, entitled lady, the one sobbing on his casket and causing a scene, talking to a friend of hers. She says out of nowhere that, "Yeah, I was actually gonna get married to NB and take NB's kid from," insert my sister's name here, "and we were gonna move far, far away and live together." Me and my sister exchanged a look that said, "What in the actual frick?" We had never seen her, and given how close we were with his family, we were shocked to hear this. I then asked NB's sister what's going on and what she's talking about. And funnily enough, I've never seen that woman in all my life, she says. All I know is she was his co-worker and they barely talked. He actually was often annoyed by her, constantly trying to ask him out. All in all, she was outcast by everyone there, including the family of NB for lying about their late family member. So, here's another story from my past. An update for the shenanigans going on between my neighbors is heating up, and I want to see how it ends before putting up what I hope is the finale to our friendly neighborhood Karen. Today's story is about a guy from a few years ago. He decided that he would park his car in front of a gate that is only opened once a week at most for trailer loads to get into the rear yard. Since we rarely get loads like that, it's infrequently used. We still don't allow people to park there as permitted by the city. For years before we would park one of our service call trucks in front of it, but after it got hit by a car, we stopped doing that. Enter Mr. Peacock, as I call him. I call him this because he's the only man I have ever seen pull out a mirror and a comb from his pocket to check his hair. He also spends about 3 minutes in his car after parking to fix his hair and make sure his tie is straight. I wish this was a joke. He is also known to drench himself in cologne before work. Well, Mr. Peacock would park his brand new Lexus RX in front of my gate every day. We would call the police and go through the process of having his car towed away. Basically, the officer comes out, takes pictures, makes us file a report, and then gives us a list of companies we can call to have it removed. They will usually tell you who will be the fastest. I ended up having to save that number, and we would call them right after calling the police. This guy would come to us angry, wondering what we did with his car. We would hand him a copy of the police report and the name of the towing company, and this happened for 2 weeks. He even filed a suit against my company and made several complaints to the city. So, this part may belong in petty revenge, but I am not sure. Last time we saw that car, it was totaled. That street is a hazard, as it's so oddly shaped that people think it's a straight road, but it actually dips and curves at a weird angle. The city leveled of the section by my gate, but that made a hill on both sides. GPS makes the road look straight, but it's not. So the guy who thought he was entitled to park in front of my gate got his car wrecked. The guy who hit his car survived, but neither of the cars themselves survived. Please, slow down on the roads, people. Entitled Trolley Mom has shortcut access denied. I was shopping at my local supermarket. Once my trolley was full, I headed to the checkouts. The queues for the staff checkouts were long, so I decided to take my chances at the quieter self-checkouts. I stood behind a couple that had a full trolley, and then they just started unloading. It was still going to be a little wait for me, but that would give me time to look at my groceries and figure out how I had exceeded my weekly budget yet again. The couple in front of me were both very tall. If they had a basketball team, they would be picked out and number 1 and number 2 for me. Unpacking a trolley at the checkout beside us was a mum with a toddler. The toddler was pushing boundaries as little ones do, and Mum was handling the energetic little boy and unpacking like a pro. Behind her and beside me was an older man who was delighted to watch the toddler's antics. Directly across from the supermarket is Aldi. I saw a woman exiting there and walking in a straight line directly towards us. She was pushing a half-full Aldi trolley and walking along with a boy who was about 12. I look around and the entrance to our supermarket is literally just 30 feet away from us, but Aldi Mom kept coming straight at us. I wonder if she knows the tall woman or toddler mum, and she's just coming to say hello. Nope. She doesn't know anyone. She walks up and stops with her trolley centered in front of the toddler mom and the tall woman, and then looks at them expectantly. I realize she is trying to walk through. I am looking at the space available between the 2 self-checkouts, and there is not much. 2 sets of trolleys with people on either side. It is a close fit, and there is just enough space for a slim person to walk through. "Excuse me," the Aldi mum says. "Yes," the tall woman answers. "I need to get through." "There is not enough room for you to get through," the tall woman responds. "Can you please move?" The tall woman looks at her husband, who is shaking his head in disbelief, and then says, "Move where exactly?" Our lack of space to move is apparently not Aldi Mum's problem, as she says, "Can you just move? I'm in a hurry." "Aren't we all?" the tall woman says, and she casually turns and goes back to unpacking her trolley. The toddler mum, who has stopped to watch them, then continues to unpack as well. The Aldi mum looks from side to side with an expression that says she has never been treated like this before. She turns to her trolley and begins walking towards the entrance, but not without her parting shot as she says to her voice, in a voice for all to hear, "Some people are just so rude." Yes, some people are just so rude. I'm glad you pointed that out, the tall woman responded. And if you are here to buy some manners, as you clearly have none left, I think they're on aisle 4. The old man beside me bursts into laughter, and is so loud people nearby turn to look. Toddler mom thinks it's funny, and she laughs as well. The toddler doesn't get the joke, but when he sees his mum laugh, he laughs too, and the Aldi mum face turns bright red, and she walks away as fast as her fat little legs can. I only ever read these kind of encounters on Reddit, so it made me taken aback a little bit when it happened to me. Sorry for the English, not my first language. Hopefully my experience fits this sub. Sorry for the format, on the phone, edit for formatting. Last month, I took a flight back home after visiting my parents. Boarding time, I walked to my seat, 23A. There was already someone sitting there, so I had to double check. Make sure it's on the 23rd row. Yep, I was right. So I told the lady sitting there, "Hey, it's my seat." Suddenly, a man on 23D offered me the 23E seat. Turns out they're a family, and the mother didn't want to be separated from her children, who's in 23B and 23C, so she took my 23A. I was confused. It's not like she'll be long separated from her children. The children were in 23B and 23C, and her husband was in 23D and 23E, only separated by an aisle. Obviously, I refused. I specifically booked a window seat. It could help me feel at ease looking at the clouds and help me fall asleep. The seat they offered me to trade was the middle seat, 23E, trapped between the dad and a random man in a narrow airplane scene. Nope, I feel suffocated enough already. Thank you very much. No, I booked the window seat. The mother immediately began to act offended. She replied harshly,
"So you don't mind we, a family, sitting separately?"
"Well, why don't you book the right seats in the first place?" I didn't say this out loud, though. I was only replaying the words, "That's my seat," and I was adamant with my answer. Finally, she's up, walking away from my seat with angry words she whispered silently towards me. I chose not to pay attention to them. However, things changed afterwards. Her children were still sitting on 23B and 23C seat. I obviously could not walk into my seat. I asked them politely to get out of their seats so I could get in. And what did the mother do? She body shamed me.
"Kids, get up. Her body is huge. She could not get in."
My height is above the woman's height, average in my country. Plus, I gained 10 kilograms in the pandemic. I have body dysmorphia already. Comments like those hurt my feelings badly. With that comment, I couldn't stay silent. I replied, "So what? So what if I'm huge?" She did not silence easily. She kept on, and the insults towards me even louder. Her daughter silently and with blatant panic whispered at me,
"Please forgive my mother. She's always like that."
Her daughter, who I assumed is no more than 12 years old, looked sincere. It helps tuned out the angry insults from aisle beyond because I felt bad for her. The angry tirade stops about 5 minutes later when the mother told her kids to move seats a few rows away. Once more, the daughter pleaded an apology to me. It's crazy to think that 12-year-old was way more emotionally mature than her entitled 40-year-old mother. The whole time her mother spouted insults at me, the daughter looked pale and her body rigid, her gaze fixated at one spot. I assume she was very embarrassed. Poor kid. And now for our last story for the day, entitled Woman at a Pharmacy. So for a little context, I have a condition that requires I take daily medication for the rest of my life. Which sucks, but it is what it is. Because of that, I am in the pharmacy at least once a month picking up new medication. And anyone who had to consistently go to the doctors and pharmacies knows you're eventually going to run into a Karen or two. Usually it's just some mom whose kid has to get some antibiotics. Or someone that doesn't understand that you can't send in a prescription and pick it up within an hour. But this was the only one I thought was bad enough to share. So, I was waiting in line at the pharmacy, and this lady walks up and goes straight to the front. The pharmacist explains that there's a line and she needs to wait. She looks annoyed, but goes to the back of the line. So far, nothing really out of the ordinary happens. I am about third in line, and she's the fifth. The craziness started when I was next in line. The lady was waiting in some of the seats and starts crying. I tried to ignore it, 'cause you could tell it was obviously fake. Doing that thing that toddlers do, crying and looking around to see if anyone is giving her any attention. And when they're not, they cry louder. Finally, she was crying loud enough that I got the attention of an employee who asked if she was okay. And that's when she started complaining to everyone who would listen that, "I have been here over an hour," which is BS. She came in a few minutes after me, and I'd been there for only 15 minutes.
"And I'm sick."
"I don't understand why you would do this to me.
"I need my medicine."
At this point, all I can do is roll my eyes and think, yeah, lady, you're at a pharmacy. We're here picking up prescription medication. No one is here because we're having a great time. We're here because we're picking up prescriptions. I finally get up to the front, and they let me know they have my meds, but they're in a box that hasn't been unpacked, and they asked me to wait. No big deal. The system tells me when they come in, not when they're on the shelf. At this point, she is bawling and complaining loudly. You'd think she was a little kid who got their toy taken away. I go to sit in one of those seats and just try to ignore her, as the guy in the front of her gets his medication. Finally, it's her turn, and she magically stops crying, on a dime, and turns to being angry and complaining to the pharmacist that she has been there for an hour and needs her medication, and how dare they make her wait that long. This happens every time, blah, blah, blah. Obviously, the pharmacist knew that was BS, but was calm and just moved on. The situation got worse when it turned out this lady had sent in her prescription that morning and it had to be ordered, so obviously they didn't have it. The pharmacist explains that they didn't have it and she needs to give them at least 2 days for that. She then starts screaming at full volume that this was BS. She sent it in 4 days ago. They should have it. And saying this happens at every pharmacy she goes to. If this happens at every pharmacy you go to, lady, there's only one common denominator, and that is, drum roll please, you. Anyway, back to the story. And if she had to deal with this again, she would go back to her old pharmacy. Again, all I could do was try and ignore her and think, yeah, if this happens at every pharmacist, maybe it's not the pharmacy that's the problem. Exactly! And this back and forth went on for a few minutes before she finally accepted. They really don't have the medication, and she would have to wait. She left in a huff, telling anyone who would listen, and how ridiculous it was that they made her wait. And she was sick and needed her medication, and they should already have it. Finally, my medication was ready, and I joked with the pharmacist about how crazy that was, and she confirmed that the lady does it every time. And every time the time frame she says she already submitted it gets bigger and bigger. I guess to try and guilt them into thinking it was their mistake, and magically making her medicine appear. Not a crazy exciting story, but I could not believe the scene this lady made, because she messed up sending her prescription in, and was made to wait for like 20 minutes maximum. Jeez. Entitled Mom and the Octopus. This happened a week ago. I'm still angry, but part of me hopes I can laugh about it soon. For context, my son is 15 months old and loves stuffed animals. His favorite is a soft, light pink octopus we call Otto. It's the closest thing to the word octopus he's been able to say so far. We got it for him at a bookstore while on vacation in Europe last July. He spotted Otto at the store himself and immediately reached for it. To this day, my son is obsessed with Otto. He takes it almost everywhere and gets upset if we try to take it from him. And he loves playing with its tentacles before going to sleep. We're extra protective of Otto due to the fact that it was made by a company from the country we bought it in. I'm pretty sure it can be found online, but we've never seen it in any local stores. Anyway, I had to run some errands at the mall last Friday. My fiancé was busy and our eldest was at a friend's house, so I took the baby with me, Otto and all. When I was done, I still had some time left before needing to leave, so I took my son to the toy store. I spent a few minutes showing my son some toys before we went to see some stuffed animals. I took him off the stroller and he instantly waddled to the nearest shelf. He handed me Otto to pick up another plushie, so I put it in the stroller's storage basket. We played with the stuffed animals for about 5 minutes before he started getting tired. I put him back in the stroller and reached under the seat, only to realize Otto was missing. My sons noticed it as soon as my hand was in his view again, and he started crying loudly, so I picked him up. I wasn't looking forward to ordering another octopus online, so I started going over the shelf again, hoping to find it among the stuffed animals. An employee who had heard my son crying came up to me to ask if I needed help. I explained the situation and described Otto, and she said there was a lady at the checkout counter trying to buy a pink octopus. I went to the counter, still holding my son. A woman in her mid-30s, the entitled mom of the story, was there with her daughter about 5 years old. I vaguely remember seeing them when I entered the store. She was arguing with the cashier about something she was trying to buy. I got closer, and sure enough, the cashier was holding Otto, trying to explain to EM that it wasn't one of their products. It didn't have a tag on it, and couldn't be identified by the store, so they couldn't sell it to her. Entitled Mom was telling her she was lying, as her daughter had picked it up from the soft toy section herself. I didn't think EM was trying to steal Otto, I figured. The kid's 5, she probably just picked it up by mistake. I'm a father myself, so I try not to expect the worst from other parents. I quickly approach the cashier and politely say, "Hi, excuse me, I think there's been a mistake. That's my son's toy. He bought it to the store with him." My entitled mom did not like that, and she told the cashier,
No, he's lying. It's pink. It's a girl's toy. My daughter picked it up and I'm buying it.
And this went on for about 2 minutes. The cashier seemed eager to just give me Otto, but entitled mom wasn't having it. She was calling me a liar and a thief, telling the cashier I had no proof the octopus was mine. Her daughter wanted it and she had seen it first. I eventually gave up on trying to be the bigger person. I pulled out the phone and showed them both pictures of my son with Otto that dated a few months back. I'm still not quite sure why I didn't do that sooner, but I do like to watch the world burn sometimes. However, entitled mom still didn't believe me, or at least claimed not to. So I told the cashier to look for a zigzaggy seam. I don't know what it's actually called, on the base of one of its tentacles. About 4 months ago, my eldest accidentally ripped Otto while playing with the baby. My fiancée stitched it back together, but she's not a great seamstress. Her words, not mine. So the part she fixed is a little noticeable. And because Otto was in the cashier's hands when I got there was no way I'd know that unless it was my son's. The cashier found the seam and finally gave me Otto. Entitled mother's daughter was crying, and she tried to argue a little more, but it didn't work. I thanked the cashier, gave the octopus back to my still sniffling child, and quickly left the store. Oh, how I wish this was the end. Not 2 minutes later, as I was putting my son back in the stroller, I felt someone pulling at my shirt. I turned around and there was EM's 5-year-old daughter. She was still sobbing, and her mom was standing about 4 feet away from us. The little girl started with, "Mister, I want that blushie. My mommy said you have to give it to me." And I know better than to talk to a stranger's child, so I took a deep breath, looked over at EM and said, "Ma'am, please stop. I'm not giving it away. Not to you, not to anyone." And the kid yelled for her mother, and entitled mom was fuming at this point. She walked in my direction and snapped at me.
What kind of monster are you? How dare you talk to my daughter like that?
This is my son's favorite toy. Your daughter might have picked it up by mistake, but that doesn't make you entitled to it.
That's a girl's toy. Your son is a boy. He probably hates it. So go back in the store and get him a boy's toy. Give my daughter the octopus.
After about a minute of her calling me a bad father and me mostly ignoring her, EM tried to shove her hand into the stroller to grab the toy from my son's hands. I acted quickly and stuck my arm out, blocking her. I then said to her, "If you so much look at my son again, I'm calling security." EM looked like I'd slapped her, but I think she got the message. She huffed, grabbed her daughter by the arm, and walked away, and I practically ran to the parking lot, if not for the stroller slowing me down. I told my fiancée about what happened when I got home, and she got angry, but we did manage to make a few jokes about entitled mom's behavior. My son got Otto back unharmed, and thankfully will not remember this. I sincerely hope entitled mom's daughter got some other stuffed animal, and I'd be extra glad if it was an expensive one. Damn, that mom's hell entitled. Well, anyway, on to the next story. Crazy lady accuses me of kidnapping my stepson and tries to kidnap him from me. So this happened about a week ago, and honestly I'm still fuming from this. I'm not sure if this belongs in the subreddit, but here goes. First, a little backstory. I'm a mixed ethnicity individual. I've been confused for many races over the course of my 29 years on this planet, but I'm literally Caucasian and African American. Usually it can be figured out, but the difference with me is my father is Caucasian, so therefore my hair is straight. I'm originally from Texas, and I'm usually confused for being Mexican, but now I live in Massachusetts, and I've never had an issue with anyone confused about my race, until this day. Also, I am married to a Caucasian woman who had a child before we were married. His father is not in his life as much, and I took the responsibility because I love this woman and I love this little boy as if he were my own. He is 4 now, and I've been in his life since he was 1. Anyways, on to the story. My wife needed a few things from the grocery store, and she needed to run a few more errands. And usually she just goes and knocks things out herself because I'm asleep. I work nights, but this particular day I happened to be awake, and I offered to go for her. She works hard and does a lot, so I definitely felt it was necessary to do something for her, so she could relax for the day. I took my son with me so she could rest up and just take it easy, and gave me time to spend with my son for some bonding. We completed all of the errands, which went smoothly, and then headed to the grocery store to finish up our day. My son, being a typical 4-year-old, was full of energy running ahead of me, laughing and speaking to everyone he comes across, which I generally don't mind as long as he doesn't hit anyone and stays within eye view. As I'm making my way down an aisle looking for canned corn, my son jogs to the end of it, when an older lady is entering it at the other end. My son, being the sweet social butterfly he is, approached, exclaims and excited, "Hi, me 4 and me Ryan," bless his little heart. The lady looked down and said, "Hello there, you should be running around unattended. Let's go find your parents." I didn't think anything of her statement because I assumed she just hadn't seen me. "Ryan, come back here, bud, please." He excitedly runs back towards me and starts running in circles because, he's 4. I'm still searching the shelves as the lady walks past me and stops behind me. Again, I think nothing of it because it's a grocery store and you have to share the aisles. I turn my basket around and start to walk towards the front cash register when this lady literally blocks my path. I say excuse me and try to walk around her, and she moves her cart in front of me again. I honestly thought she was just getting confused and said excuse me once more and tried one more time to go around, and she just blocks my path. The following conversation ensues. Sorry about that, we'll get out of your way."
"Oh, I don't think so. You're not going anywhere with that child."
"You mean my son?"
That's not your child. He's white. And you're Mexican. You probably didn't even know his name until he said it to me.
Sure, whatever, lady. Can you just move? My wife is home and anxiously waiting for us.
Stop your lies. We're not taking him anywhere, you pervert.
This whole time, my son is standing close to me, holding my leg, because he was honestly getting scared. And I was getting angry, because I hadn't had much sleep, and I have a short fuse anyway. Thanks, Dad. As you can see, he's standing close to me because he trusts me, and you're scaring him. So how about you buzz off?
No, he's scared because of you. He just doesn't know how to express it yet.
She looks at my son.
Now come on, sweetie. I'm here to rescue you. Come with me.
Thankfully, my son was able to communicate that he wasn't going anywhere with her. But she was having none of it. She literally grabbed my son and began to run. It caught me off guard because I honestly could not fathom what was actually happening. My son starts screaming loudly because he was so scared. And the lady is like,
Don't worry, sweetie. He won't hurt you, I promise.
Suddenly, I snap back into reality and begin to chase after this crazy witch. While running through the store, I yell for people to stop her, and that she's kidnapping my son, and thankfully a worker stops her before she makes it to the exit.
Why are you stopping me? This Mexican here is trying to kidnap my grandson.
My son is literally bawling his eyes out, and is extending his arms out, calling for me. The lady was relentless and would not let go of my son, even after he slaps her face multiple times. I laughed a little bit, not gonna lie. At this point, a manager shows up and asks what's going on. The lady spoke before me.
This pervert is trying to kidnap my grandson, and I was just trying to escape.
That's my son, you freaking psycho. Now let him go. And the manager didn't know what to believe. I don't blame him. He was caught in a weird situation. So I pulled out my phone and showed him pictures of me and my son that dated a year or so back as proof. The lady still wasn't giving up, and accused me of faking them. Like, how would you do that exactly? I'll never know, but whatever. Sadly, there were two other ladies taking the psycho side, and saying I was attempting to kidnap my own son, because there was no way we were family because of our different skin tones. One even called the police, which I was actually happy about because I knew they'd be able to review the security cameras. Even still, I called my wife to see if she could come to the store to get this situation cleared up quicker. As soon as I told her what was going on, she zoomed to the store. She got there in about the same time as the police. The crazy ladies were giving their statements to the cops when my wife walked in. As soon as she walked in, my son goes, "Mama, help!" My wife is a true mama bear, and she immediately flew into a rage when she saw this lady holding my son. "Let him go, now!"
Sorry, sweetie. I was just trying to protect him from this pervert over here. Yeah, we saw him trying to kidnap him, but this lady saved him.
The cop looks at the lady and is confused. "I thought this was your grandson." "I have no idea who that lady is," says my wife. She then takes out her phone and shows the officer a picture of my mother-in-law.
Okay, look, I'm sorry. He's not my grandson, but I was only trying to protect him from this dirty pervert over here. Yeah, I witnessed the whole thing. He snatched the child and tried to run away with him, but this lady stopped it. Yeah, I saw it too. He needs to be arrested. And you, pointing to my wife, should be thankful that this lady was here to save your son, because you obviously just let him loose wherever.
My wife said, "Who are you talking about again?" And all three crazy ladies pointed at me. "Oh, you mean my husband," says the wife.
Husband?
Yeah, who do you think called me and got me here so fast? Said my wife. I presented my ID to the officer and the manager, and my wife did the same. We all each showed pictures of us on our phones to prove we really were a family. The cop nodded in approval and handed us our phones back, and jotted down a few notes. The three ladies, for some reason, still kept trying to say that this was all fake, and my wife was in on the kidnapping, and said we all need to be arrested. My wife lost it at this point and let off some colorful words that I won't repeat here, but she definitely got her point across. Then the nail in the coffin came for the psycho trio. The officer turns to the manager and asks, "Sir, do the cameras work here?" "Yes, we have them inside and out." "Okay, let's go review." The three ladies' faces went pale, like ghostly pale. The officer reviewed the outside camera as I pulled into the parking lot and saw me take my son out of my car, and then as I went up and down the aisles. And most importantly, the instant the woman snatched up my son and began to run. Upon his return, he asks, "Would you like to press charges?" And Lady 1 says,
Yes, I would.
and Officer says, "Why would I be asking you that question? Shut your mouth and sit down." And then he turns to me and repeats the question, and I say absolutely. Lady 1 was charged with attempted kidnapping, false imprisonment, providing a false police report, and child endangerment. The other two were charged with filing a false police report as well. And to make matters worse for Lady 1, my son bruises easily, and she left some terrible spots on him from where she was grasping him. But he's fine. They added a charge of child abuse to her rap sheet. I have court later this year, but I'm not sure when because of COVID. The officer will be following up with me in a few weeks. Sorry for the length. My sister blamed my gray hairs on our mother to grasp at straws. In the past year, my sister had some bizarre idea that any gray hairs I had were a result from stress caused by our mother, when in truth that's not really the case at all, since my sister is the one who stresses me out more. It all started a year ago last summer, when she asked me to drive her to a bar and be her designated driver. She would buy me dinner whenever she asked this of me, so I didn't mind too much. What I did mind is she always wanted to stay later than the agreed upon time of going home. But that's not what this post is about. While at the bar, she had a good number of drinks in her, and then she went on a rant about our mother. I won't relay the bulk of what she said that day, because again, this post isn't about that. But it was bad enough that our mother may have disowned her if she had been there to hear it. Anyway, during that rant, she suddenly focused on the fact I have some gray hairs and started saying our mother was responsible for it. I pointed out I was 36 and it was natural with age. She then pointed out that she's older than me and has no gray hairs. And for the record, we're half siblings, so a lot of different genetics, but either way, no matter what I did to try and calm her, she wouldn't stop with the gray hair nonsense. In a later fight we had, I confronted her about the things she said, and I ended up unloading on her. She also accepted no blame for her actions and swept it under the rug. She only brought up the fight later to give me one of her soft talk speeches about how she felt attacked, which was code for, "I'm just gonna forget the points you made so I can tell myself I'm right." Then about a month ago, she had a fight with her boyfriend, and then she cried to me. She somehow ended up bringing up the past situation before, and I ended up reminding her of the things she said, and that my gray hair wasn't caused by our mother. She suddenly looked embittered and actually said,
Then what was it?
I got angry and told her I'm nearly 37. It's just age, and frankly, I don't care about my hair slowly turning gray. I'd rather have gray hair than no hair. Baldness is actually one of my biggest worries. And though we seemed to make up, I got the feeling my sister was still unconvinced. She looks for any excuse she can find to blame our mother about things, no matter how small or petty they are. And I'm frankly tired of it. The fact she had to reach out as far as to blame my gray hairs on our mother was just grasping at straws. And now she's hypocritically ranting about our stepdad getting a DUI in the parking lot when she got one once years ago, driving like a mad woman in a car with bald tires while totally wasted. By the way, she totaled that car. That's the end of that hot mess of a story. On to the next one, I guess. Entitled lady assumes I'll pay for everything since I paid for a homeless person's groceries. I was at the supermarket buying groceries for a Sunday breakfast. Eggs, pancake batter, bacon, and bread when I saw a homeless man taking a few things off the shelf. I reached the counter and the homeless man was 2 places ahead of me. He was buying some mixed milk, cereal, and bread. He didn't have enough money and was using coins. So I told the cashier that I will pay for him and asked him to add a few more items like eggs, some biscuits, instant noodles, etc. He was really happy and thanked me continuously. Then he went to his car and started eating. I was still in line when the person who was in between me and the homeless person. She got her stuff, scanned, and packed up and started to go without paying. The cashier was confused and in a loud and sharp tone asked her to stop. She looked furious and confused when he asked her to pay. She told her that the person behind her, aka me, would be paying for her groceries, just like I did for the homeless sir. I was listening to music, but I stopped when I heard her entitlement falling from her mouth like an apple from a rotten tree. I gave her a WTF look, and by now she was the center attraction. She yelled that since I paid for him, I will have to pay for her. Otherwise, it's not right. Now, I paid around $5, 400 Indian rupees for his stuff. This lady was not getting a thing or two. She was buying the most exotic meats, eggs, flavored milks. Her total was about $60. Now, since I had a few things, I got to the cashier to scan my stuff. I paid for mine and went out in a hurry. But this lady thought it was a good idea to grab my bag and not let me go and make me pay for her. The cashier asked me if I wanted him to call police, and I shaked my head yes. The lady seemed to evolve a superpower, and left in a second, like a flash, leaving her stuff there. The cashier told me that this lady does this often. She is a well-off lady living in a 2-story apartment and is a really entitled person and thinks everyone owes her everything. She has been jailed for 6 months and 2 months of 2 separate occasions as well. Well, I guess India is full of entitled people, and my life is too. God damn. On to the next story. My husband buys a coffee machine. He's upset that he has to use it. My husband loves coffee. He's the only one in the house who drinks it. Tea or coffee gives me acidity and insomnia, so I don't drink it. Recently, he bought a fancy machine that makes delicious coffee. The only problem is that the coffee trickles down drop by drop. It takes around 4 to 5 minutes to fill a tumbler, but can feel like forever if you have nothing else to do but stand there and watch it trickle down. I get the coffee machine going every morning while getting my dear daughter ready for school and making her breakfast. When he comes home after getting ready, his tumbler is ready to go. He leaves and then I take darling daughter to school, come back and work from home. So recently I had an injury that left me bedridden. Luckily, it was darling daughter's midterm break, so there was no pressure of getting up early to prepare her meal and take her to school. The only thing left was the coffee. Husband says, "No problem, I'll make it myself." Days 1, 2, and 3, he makes the coffee and also cleans the machine after every use. But on day 4, he says, "This is too much and wasting my time." I say, "Why don't you switch on the machine tomorrow and get back upstairs to get ready? We live in a duplex bedroom, and the dressing room is upstairs. Kitchen and living room are downstairs. Also, he has stopped cleaning the machine." Day 5, he's upset because he had to run up and down twice to tend to his coffee. My next suggestion was, move your toiletries to the downstairs washroom for a few days so you can get ready there. "I'm not comfortable with that." Well, now the only solution left is to wake up very early. Day 6, 7, and 8, he wakes up early to make his coffee, and he no longer cleans the machine. Day 8 evening. "I'm very tired. My sleep cycle's whacked." And I say, "Looks like you need to make more coffee." And day 9, he's now side-eyeing me and guilt-tripping me, hoping I'd crawl down the stairs to make his coffee. Not happening, so he calls up the maid and tells her to start coming early to make his coffee. She is a part-time helper, and there's no way she'll come this early. Day 10, he has given up. Now he's buying his coffee from outside, and the machine remains unused. Edit. I have no idea about coffee and coffee machines. It does not have a timer. Not so fancy then, I suppose. That's a coffee gremlin if I've ever seen one. Anyway, on to the next story that's probably the last one. A stolen dress. My mother died when I was 12. At the moment of her death, our family could have been the stuff of movies. We had not seen our father in a couple of years, and we were well used to a life without any adult input. I had found my mother dead, called the ambulance, and the neighbors all witnessed the spectacle. By afternoon, there were her, quote-unquote, friends going through her closet. Before illness had stolen it, my mother's true pride was her looks. She was beautiful, with stunning red hair. Even after the ravages of her illness, she was very pretty. She had a green silk dress that was a treasure from the times before everything went bad. In that dress, she could silence a room. I stood at her bedroom door and watched these women try on her clothes. One of them grabbed the emerald dress, and immediately the woman started to fight over the prize. They all wanted it. One woman claimed it, but another grabbed it out of her hands, and immediately locked it in her car. Attention took over the room. I stood and watched, powerless. The hyenas who did not get the dress started to bargain their pilfered loot to exchange for the dress, but no deals were made. Words of my mom's death must have gotten to high school, and my older siblings were now walking in the door. My brother was a successful drug dealer who at 17 ruled our house. We all feared him. Even her friends knew he was dangerous. He had once taken a gun to my mother's head. Seeing him approaching the house, the woman stopped what they were doing, and we all held our breath. But he did not come inside, so they returned to their looting. In the moment, I totally forgot I was afraid of him. I forgot that I believed he hated us. I forgot the gun. I showed him and my older sister the dress locked in the Vulture's car. Mom's stuff was piled on the seats of various friends' cars, but we were all focused on the dress, and I went back to witness the harvest of our home. On the day of her funeral, my brother was a different kid. He stood tall and brave. He made sure to escort each and every one of those vultures up to see our mother laid out in the coffin, adorned in the green dress. Are we sure we're not in r/no sleep? This was terrifying in a mundane sort of way. How can this happen in real life? Oh my god! People are disgusting. Ugh! Entitled uncle and his kids tried to steal my expensive watches during a party. I, 17 male, passed from 10th with a great percentage. And my parents decided to throw a party for my friends and close relatives and cousins. It was at home only. Many of cousins, grandparents, best friends, uncles, aunts, they were all there. Now, I'm a person you would call a fashion freak and like to keep a wide range of watches, accessories, and shoes to match with my clothes. My accessories, except my watches, are not that expensive, but my watches are. They're quite expensive for someone my age and even older than me. But most of them are gifts and prizes from tournaments I play. My uncle is not really well off as he decided to have a large family, and by that I mean 8 kids, 6 girls and 2 boys. He lives in an area with a high cost of living and often asks for cash from his brothers and will never return it, but not really large amounts. Now, most of his kids are younger than me and quite well behaved, but the oldest 2, an 18-year-old and a 16-year-old, are total crazy people. I didn't want to invite those 2, but I had to. So now getting to the main part. During the party, my older cousin asks where the washroom is. Now, this was odd because this wasn't the first time he was there, but I told him the directions. My room, which was in the way to the bathroom. I live in my room and have all my things, like my watches and stuff in there. And I'm the only kid and nobody usually enters anybody's room, since me and my parents are always out for studies and work. After some time I saw my uncle and smaller EK also going towards that direction, and this was extremely odd, and I went behind them and saw what I never wanted to. They entered my room and were going through my stuff. I took out my phone and started recording from a small opening in my door, and went with the party as if nothing happened. After a few hours, when it was only immediate family and my friends left, I noticed those 3 getting really uncomfortable, and seemed like they wanted to leave early for, well, obvious reasons. They started to gather their things, and when I stopped them and asked to return my things, or I will tell on them, they, like any foolish person, started to act like they knew nothing and accused me of lying. I showed them the recording and said that that I had already sent it to everyone there, and I just need to switch on the Wi-Fi for it to get uploaded. They still lied, so I did what any person would do. I sent everyone the video, and after a few minutes there was crying, shouting, cursing, and whatnot. They still refused to give them back, saying they need them, and we could just throw a few bundles of notes and get them back. While all this was happening, I had already seen if they had anything in their jeans pockets, and no, they were empty. So the only place they could have left it was in my entitled sister's handbag. I didn't want to have to snatch it and I'll drop all the stuff on the floor. There was almost $10,000, $12,000 worth of accessories like watches, rings, bracelets, or chains in there. She got mad and tried to gather stuff around, but her younger sister stopped her. She has become one of our favorites since then. I quickly picked up all my stuff and went to keep them in my room, and then locked the room from outside. Those 3 by now had become mad and were crying and left the house immediately with the rest of the family. Aunt has been apologizing, but it wasn't her fault, so I can't accept that, and I politely told her, and she respected my choice. Surprisingly, all of my family is on my side. My mother had been saying that I was wrong to snatch her purse and take out the stuff and go through it, as girls have personal stuff. I didn't think I did anything wrong, as my stuff was more precious to me than their dignity in the family. But still, was I in the wrong? You weren't in the wrong, OP, but there is an update to the story. First of all, thank you to those who are providing their suggestions and support for me. Many of you suggested that if my mother keeps supporting them, I should just report to the police. And I think I would, but not right now, as something more disturbing is happening. This all happened a week ago, but I decided to upload it since it's been about a 1-day span, and a lot has happened. As I told my uncle's family used to get financial help from family, mainly grandparents, and they decided to stop the assistance and revealed they had been giving them about $20,000 every year for the past 7 years. It also got revealed that my mother was also giving them a lot of money to them, which she used to take out from her father's joint account for shopping every month. My mother has been staying with them for the past 5 days, and said that my entitled cousin needed emotional support after what I did to her and the hate comments she's getting from the other family members. My mother has also taken out more than $4,000 in the past few days. My dad blocked her cards and bank account access yesterday, and all those three and my mother had been blowing my father's phone up and claiming us to be a horrible person and would be the reason if something happens to his kids because of us. My dad arranged for me to be in a new apartment about 2 hours away from here and really close to my new school, university, and friends, where I could stay now, as I would be turning into an adult soon. I've started shifting my stuff, books, clothes, and of course accessories, consoles, and everything valuable, etc. Now this is the part which broke me. In the past few years, a lot of my stuff has gone missing. In the start it was books, toys, and some expensive stationery items. Mostly my paints and sketchbooks. I love to draw and sketch. But I shrugged them off as I might have misplaced them at school or with friends. And then it was shoes, and then my favorite clothes. At this time, we changed a lot of house staff, thinking maybe they were taking it. But then even my phone went missing during a party, and it was still unknown where the stuff went. But yesterday, when my aunt came home to apologize for everything, she revealed that my mom had been giving my stuff to my cousins. As they liked those things, then they could not afford it. I was devastated, and knew that it was my mom who would have given them permission to take away my stuff. And that's why she wasn't home, so she would not get revealed. But now I know everything, and might never talk to her, and will stay in no contact with her. My father is furious and is crying day and night, as she used to love her, but she was always being dishonest with him, and was always stealing. I don't know, but they might divorce. I don't know what to do now. I would appreciate any suggestions. But wait, there's another update. What started as a watch theft may now result in 2 divorces. First of all, thanks to those who suggested various things, and I'm doing some of them. Some of you suggested to move out as soon as possible, and that won't be needed as of now. My mom is not staying with me, and I changed home locks with my dad's consent. I have also started to move my important stuff to the new apartment, like my clothes, accessories, study material, and consoles, etc. My dad, after getting emotionally stable, decided to go out. I wanted to accompany him, but he didn't let me. He returned after a few hours, and upon asking me that he made some changes in the financial accounts and other things, he dissolved the account he opened for my cousin's study, and my mom manipulated him into opening one. I never knew it had almost 7 figures in it. He also removed my uncle's name from the car ownership, as he drives as a second owner. My dad gifted him the car. He also removed my mother's name from all possible places she could get any money, her credit cards, accounts, and etc. My aunt again visited yesterday to provide support for my dad, as he is still not emotionally recovered. To be honest, I adore her much more than my crazy mom. She also revealed that she has had thoughts of finally having a divorce. She wanted to get it 10 years ago, but my mom and uncle persuaded her to not, and she won't be well off after that. She also told that my uncle had been emotionally and physically abusive right after they had their first kid. He had been sent to jail several times after stealing from his previous workplace, and so did his eldest kid twice. I tried to be as supportive of her as possible. She went to stay with her mother for the future time period until she starts with the legal proceedings. She might get custody of the smallest two, as they are still under 6 and they need her. Oh wow. Okay, that's quite the story. Anyway, one more story for today. My entitled mom tried to rent my spare room out to her friends. So this happened about 18 months ago, but I only just remembered when I came across an entitled parent story on TikTok. Basically, I began living above a pub that I own. It has a large 2-room living room connected via an archway and curtains across it. My youngest sister and her friends began staying in one of the living rooms that had privacy of the curtain. My office was the other living room. This flat also has 2 large bedrooms. Mine is the biggest. My mother was helping me set up the pub since I also gone back to a university a year prior. My mother hired a chef who lived on an island nearby, who had been her friend years back, but I have never met. She had offered him a job because he had been looking to move back home. And then all of a sudden she tells me he'll be staying in the 2nd bedroom for a while until he gets a place sorted. I hated that idea and tried to protest a lot because I did not want a strange man living with me. And this was the first place that I had to myself, and I hope to enjoy being on my own. My mother mentioned that it'll only be a while, a couple months max. It didn't matter anyway because the guy ran. My mother's best friend, who has helped me sort the pub out a lot, and I have known for years, has also in between places at the point. So after the first guy left, I suggested she move her stuff. She said it would only be for a month while she finds somewhere else. I said no worries, and she moved her stuff in. And then it turned out my mother's other best friend also started to need a place to live, because he didn't want to live at home with his parents anymore. So my mom invited him to live in my flat. When she told me this, I questioned where he would even stay. She replied, "He'll have your room. You stay in the living room with the curtain. And then when the first best friend moves out, you'll move into that room and you'll get your room back." When I responded, I didn't really know this best friend well. In the 10 to 15 years of their friendship, I've met the guy only a handful of times. My mother responded, "Oh, it's only until he gets a place. It'll be about 6 months." Whenever I pushed or said I didn't feel comfortable, or I wasn't going to give up my room, she got annoyed and says she's just trying to help her friend. That Christmas, the first best friend stuff was still there, but she wasn't staying there. She had her own place, but she just left a lot of her stuff there for a while. My sister came back from uni for the holidays, and at that time we were discussing that in the summer break she would live here too. My youngest sister was still living in the living room with her friends too. Then my mother said, "Since first best friend has a place now, second best friend can move in." I replied saying that my sister is living here, but that means my mother has a spare room, so why can't she let her friend live with her? Her response is, "I don't want them living with me. I like my space." I replied, "Well, you know him better than I do, so I don't want him living with me either." She responded that he's desperate for a place to stay, and mentally it's taking a toll on him. So I replied again that he should live with her. She got angry then because she was just trying to help her friend. He never ended up moving in, but it felt like my mother was always offering my spare room up to anyone that walked by. My boyfriend actually put a lock on all the doors on the inside for safety when the first guy stayed for a week. Edit. Just to clarify, I love my mom. None of her friends live with me, and I have this place to myself now. She doesn't work at the pub anymore. And now that I have my own place and the pub, I've stood my ground a lot more and said no a lot more. I don't get guilt-tripped anymore, and everything is good. My mother and I get on better now that we have separate lives. I just thought it was a funny story because I find the audacity hilarious. So, a few years ago, I was teaching a private urban religious college. Since I only had my MS, I was thankful for the opportunity to teach and get the experience before I moved on for my PhD. The school usually had me teach accelerated night courses, which were aimed on the non-traditional learners. You know, adults going back to school after many years off. I loved my students and had a blast teaching them. I had some issues with a few here and there, but generally my experiences were generally positive. But there was this one couple. Let's call them Hannah and Larry. That semester I had been asked to cover a few more traditional courses at the last minute. Rather than being accelerated, it meant 3 times a week for an hour all semester. Furthermore, the last was very small, only about 4 students, which would have been fine. Small classes can be great, and a paycheck was a paycheck after all, if it hadn't been for Hannah and Larry. You see, this couple had attendance issues, to put it mildly. They would show up to a class or two, and they'd just vanish for a week or more with no word. Just when I suspected they were gone for good, they would show up, usually with the sole excuse or another. Medical issues, car problems, work, etc. At first I tried to be sympathetic. I always have the attitude that life happens, and when it rains, it pours sometimes. But at a certain point, I began to grow a bit suspicious that they were selling me a story. Okay, I was immediately suspicious, but I'm usually inclined to let things slide to a certain point. Same as my professors did for me. This was all the worse because of that small nature of the class. Every time I did prep for a session, assuming all 4 would be present, they would skip and throw my plans off. But when I just accepted they would be gone and prepare activities for 2 students, they would show up. All of this would be frustrating, but acceptable if it weren't for 2 things. First of all, whenever they showed up, the 2 would have an attitude about them, and just expect everyone to conform to their presence and bend to their will. And 2, of course, they aren't doing any work. And these 2 factors came to a head as Hannah, who was the louder and more confident of the 2 of them, would all but demand the extensions, the ability to hand in late work, and I'd give it to them, only for both her and Larry to blow off work yet again. I'd be pretty accommodating to my students within reason, but it quickly became obvious that Hannah thought she was playing me and could get whatever she wanted, and that couldn't stand. I have some level of pride and hate being seen as a pushover. Now, I could have crushed them immediately and just said, no more late work, but I was sure Hannah would just throw a fit and go to administration. I knew the admin would back me up, but it was a hassle I really didn't want. I was working on a second MS at this point and working at 2 other jobs. I was frothing at the mouth, busy at that point, and hadn't even planned on teaching that semester. I only agreed because they needed me. And besides, I'm a pretty easygoing guy, but I do have my limits. I was angry at this point, but I do have a wicked sense of humor. Hannah wants to think that she has me wrapped around her finger. Okay, let her think that. I was going to hand her enough rope to hang herself with. So, for the past few weeks, whenever she asked for an extension, I'd smile and say, sure, and then chuckle when nothing came in. Every time I wrote her and Larry emails reminding them of the new dates. Getting things in writing is key, kids. And then we arrived at the final. I hadn't seen the twosome in a few sessions, and was actually surprised to see them stumble in to take their test. They failed, of course, but what you gonna do? Hannah comes in front of me to the class and asks for an extension. I put my best teacher voice on and said, I was disappointed, but fine, life happens. However, I was posting grades the next weekend, so the absolute last minute I would accept them late was Friday, at 11:59 p.m. The second it hits midnight, my books were closed. I asked if they both understood, and they summoned up a bit of solemnness when they assured me that they did. Good. I confirmed it in an email, and sat back to grade the finals over the week. I mean, there were only 4, it wasn't that much work. I knew there was a risk they'd follow through, and I'd end up with a semester's worth of work to grade, but I was feeling pretty confident that it wasn't going to happen at that point. Friday rolls around. I didn't work my other jobs that day, and my own schoolwork was done, so I decided to buy a few beers and kick back to play some video games and relax. I looked down at a certain point and realized that it's midnight. I open my email, remind everyone that the books are closed. If I give an extension, it's open to the whole class, but I'm not playing favorites. Not that anyone else needed it. I cracked open another beer, let out my best supervillain laugh, and went back to my game. Sunday comes around, and I'm posting the final grades for the semester. I usually hate failing students, but I admit I had a smile on my face as I assigned Hannah and Larry their well-deserved Fs. 10 minutes after I hit save for the grades, I hear the familiar ba-ding of my email going off, followed by another. Now, who could this be? Well, of course, it's Hannah and Larry. Larry's email can best be summed up as, oh my god, didn't you get my email with the work? I sent it on Friday. Hannah said the same exact thing. Now, it's obvious they're thinking they can get another day or two to get the work this way. After all, hadn't I been so pliant and naive all semester? Oh, the fools, the fools. They've played right into my hands, and this is the moment I've been waiting weeks for. I double-checked to make sure I hadn't missed emails from them, just to be safe. I hadn't. And then I'd type out my response. No, I didn't, and I did just double-check after your last message. That's okay. Emails get lost sometimes. And at this point, I like the image of Larry's smile when reading this. He'd won again. God, this professor's an idiot. I continued. So what I'm going to need you to do is go back into the email and send me the work. Just to take a screenshot which has the timestamp of the email and forward that to me along with your work. That'll prove you sent it on time. I then responded to Hannah's email saying the same thing. What was their response? Did their eyes widen as they realized they'd be held accountable for their actions? Did panic set in? Were there tears, howls of regret, the gnashing of teeth and rending of hair? Sadly, I'll never know. I never heard from them again. They didn't even bother making another try. And me? Well, I decided to buy some more beer that night to celebrate once again. Occasionally I'll tell my current students this tale, a humorous reminder that yes, I'm accommodating. Yes, I'm pretty laid back, but I'm not an idiot. Don't try to play me. It usually gets a good laugh out of them. That's a good teacher right there. Really good. Anyway, on to the next story. I live in a second-floor apartment with my 2 teenagers and 2 cats. An old couple, who are both over 75, live below us. The apartments are poorly maintained and not very well insulated. We can hear their TV, can hear them talking, and when she screams at him when their 6-year-old spoiled brat grandson comes and throws tantrums, and whenever they open and close their door. Apparently, they've been continuously complaining to the landlord about us being very loud. They continuously bang on the ceiling when we drop something, or close the bathroom door, which sticks to heaven. Forbid I get up at night for any reason. She screamed up the heating vent at me one night when I knocked my water glass off the bedside table. They shout when we walk up the stairs. They also have complained that we use too much water when we shower, which is 100% none of their business. Yes, my cats do run around a bit, but we keep them occupied and take them for walks, and are pretty mellow, as middle-aged cats tend to be. We do not listen to loud TV. The kids listen to music on their headphones. We don't jump or stomp or throw parties. It all came down the other night around 10:30 p.m. when my son was making food, and one of the cats decided it was playtime. Ran around for like maybe 3 minutes while my son caught him, and bang, bang, bang on the ceiling. Cat goes in my daughter's room and promptly goes to sleep. The old man comes running up the stairs and bangs on the door. I don't answer because I'm in bed and the cat is put away. Next thing you know, they called the police with a noise complaint. A noise complaint for the cat and my son using the microwave. The police show up, house is dark, I'm in my PJs, cats are asleep in the bedroom. They look at me and say, "You're in bed?" I respond with a yes. And they ask, "And what was happening?" I say my son was making food and my cat was running around. Them, "Well, cats and teenagers do that. Is that why they called us?" I respond with a simple yes. The cop then looks at his partners with a "what the hell?" look on his face and says, "Jesus Christ, what a waste of time," and then asked me if I wanted to put in a complaint of harassment. The next day, the old lady shouts across the parking spots,
"We're entitled to silence. Whenever we want silence, you are obnoxious and rude, and I'm going to get you kicked out of here."
The landlord calls and is pissed. Says they've been continually complaining about how loud we are, and it's ruining their quality of life, and we needed to keep it down. So I told him what they were complaining about, and that I am out in 60 days, and if they call again, I will make a complaint of harassment, because this is stupid. His response is, "Okay, no problem." Note that 75% of them complaining has to do with regular daytime living noise. Occasionally something after 10, but rarely. They are somehow entitled to silence at all times, in a shitty first-floor apartment. Yeah, right. I hope whoever moves in after I leave has small kids and plays loud pop music and does exercise videos in the living room. Oh, that's a petty thing to say at the end of that, but it sounds pretty reasonable. Anyway, on to our last story of the day. 5 years ago, I worked in an office with a coworker that always one-upped you. If you had good news, he had better news. If you had a crappy weekend, it was nothing compared to his. A coworker came in looking distraught, and we finally coaxed it out of her that her mom was recently diagnosed with malignant breast cancer. The guy overheard us, and suddenly his dad was diagnosed with penile cancer and had a heart attack on the same day. If looks could have killed, he would have melted through the door. A bunch of people went to HR after that, but in true HR style, he was too important, we can't prove it's true, blah blah blah. Nothing ever happened. We knew he was full of it, and there was no way half the stuff he said was true, but it wore you down, you know? About 5 months later, we're talking about our weekends on Monday. I casually mentioned that my nephew took state in both grade and weight in a recent wrestling tournament. Who shall be overhearing but the dickhead? He swoops in and says, "My nephew has plenty of wrestling medals. I bet he's not as good as mine. What's his name? I want to pull up his ranking." I gave him the name because he has jumped in with both feet before I could tell all the other coworkers that he's been nationally ranked since he was 6 for both grade and weight class. I also didn't say that he'd been recently accepted as a prestigious invitation to wrestle for an international wrestling club with a number of Olympians, having come from the program. Winning state was a pre-qualifier to the program, but everyone knew he would get it done. I didn't know they posted stats for 4th graders online, but sure enough, he pulled them up on the office computer. It only took a minute before he closed the window and tried to change the subject. A small crowd had gathered at that point, so I grabbed his keyboard with his Control-Shift-Tab and I reopened the window promptly. I don't know enough about wrestling stats to tell you how good he was, but others apparently did and were freaking out about his stats. I knew he was good, but apparently a savant or something. Lest we forget, the people then started to ask about entitled coworker's nephew and his stats. Entitled coworker was floundering and trying to get his best to backpedal, but no one would let him. We searched his last name and got no one who it could be. Entitled coworker said that his nephew was on the other side. Entitled coworker had bragged about being related to the governor, so we knew what name to search, and still no one had the right age range to be his nephew. Suddenly, entitled coworker yelled that he was in 2nd grade, so it wasn't online. My nephew's stats were online as from before that, so that was disproven. Entitled coworker's face was turning every shade of red before he finally stormed away, yelling something about harassment and going to HR. HR did reach out, but we pointed out the blatant hypocrisy when others filed complaints about him. And then there was a strongly worded email about unity, being a team player, and to respect in the workplace was sent around. Everyone ignored that, obviously. I stayed there for another 10 or so months before I moved. Entitled coworker still tried to insert himself into conversations and one-up everyone. But all it took was someone saying, "How did your nephew do in wrestling this weekend?" And he shut up. I'm a diplomat from a third world country. Recently was sent on a mission to consultate in LA. I don't want to toot my horn so much, but I speak Spanish and English and Japanese and Mandarin. This clear sky day, I was in store to get some groceries for dinner, and this Asian lady looked worried and kind of in need of help. So obviously I approached her. She was Japanese and a tourist and was looking for some ingredients to make gyoza. As I make gyoza myself, I knew where to get the minced meat and the gyoza sheets, and where kindly showed her the way while talking Japanese. She thanked me and went on her way, when in walks Karen. I was dressed in my work attire without the jacket, and Karen thought I worked there as a manager. He came yelling at me, and this is the conversation. "Hey, you! Your employee was extremely rude to me and refused to serve me. Do something about it." "I'm sorry, sir, but I don't work here." "Yes, you do. You're the manager. I saw you help that woman over there. Do your effing job and fire that lazy insert Mexican slur here. Right now." I then repeated, "I don't work here, and please calm down." "Don't tell me to calm down. You Mexicans are all the same, you lazy mother effers." I say, first of all, I'm not Mexican, and then I get cut off. "I don't want to hear it. Either you do your job or else." And he raised his voice at an actual employee in with some police officers, because the guy whom Ken harassed before was not an employee either, and reported it to the cashier, and police were called. Police officer 1 said, "Excuse me, sir, what's happening here?" Nothing, officer. These lazy people are just not doing their job, and I'm complaining. Police officer number 2 asked me, Are you a manager? I say, No, sir. I'm a diplomat working at the consulate of my country. Here's my diplomatic ID. Ken said, You, a diplomat? You told me you were a manager here. I say, I repeatedly told you I don't work here. The employee said, Officers just want him, referring to Ken, out of the store. And Ken went, What? Why? It's this Mexican that lied to me and made me angry. I say, Officer, I just want to finish my shopping and get going now. I walked a few meters away from Ken and the police because his ranting wasn't allowing me to talk with the officer. As you may have understood, I think that man mistook 2 people as employees because of their race. I don't want to have anything to do with him. May I go? Police officers, too, allowed me to leave. I went to buy my dinner ingredients, and I think Ken got banned from the store. A few days later, there was a phone call to the consulate firm from the police to follow up, and that was that. I was surprised how someone could be this dense after me repeating that I did not work there so many times. At least I'll keep helping people if I can, and next time, if there is a next time, I'll just talk in Japanese or Mandarin and pretend I don't understand. That's the end of story number 1. On to story number 2. This is a while back. I had just gotten my wisdom teeth pulled, and my friend was driving me home. On the way, I needed to go to the restroom, so we stopped at Kmart, dropped me off at the entrance. I was wearing a red t-shirt, so I did look like an employee. A couple of ladies came up to me and asked where something was. The issue was that during the car trip, my mouth had filled up with blood. I didn't want to swallow it or spit it out the window of the car, or at the entrance of the store. I figured I'd spit it out when I got to the bathroom. Anyways, all I could really do for the ladies was shake my head and make a sound. And they didn't like that at all and got angry real fast. They got in my face.
What do you mean you don't know?
I still hadn't completely recovered from the anesthesia, so I don't feel too bad about what I did. But I chose to give them a big smile, with my teeth all bloody and some running down my chin. I remember how their eyes bulged out with the stunned, "Oh my God," and how quickly they walked away. On to the next story. As a crew boss on a wildland firefighting crew, I was standing in the lobby of a hotel on a cool fall morning before going to do a prescribed burn in front of the lobby fireplace while my guys were in the free continental breakfast doing what firefighters do to free food. Also in the lobby are a half-dozen corporation types. Nice shoes, smells like money, all waiting for their CEO to come down from his room. I learned from listening that they're here to pitch a new hospital. The boss walks in, and all eyes turn to him. "Morning, boss." He stands next to me, like he has his back to the fireplace. And after a quick check to make sure they're all set, he turns to me and says, "We're ready. Go get our bags." Okay, so I'm in Nomex fire gear with my agency logo on my shirt. And damn, if the coffee hadn't hidden... Englishing is hard, pardon me. If the coffee hadn't kicked in yet, because instead of, "Yes, I'ma tow your bags," or, "Oh, sorry, I only drive, I got a bad back, you'll have to schlep your own poo," or demanding my tip advance, all I could muster was, "I start fires for a living. I'm not your driver. If you need something ignited, let me know." And off they walked. On to the next story. When I was a kid, my parents always wanted me to be active after school. So I joined baseball and soccer teams since I loved the sports. At 14 years old, I had been playing for a soccer team we called the Purple Punks, and we were enjoying our third league championship win. All my teammates celebrated on the field as a team for a while, before going off to celebrate with their own families. Mine decided we would go to a fancy Mexican restaurant where they made the guacamole at the table. Now, for this story, you must know I was adopted from South America, and both my parents are white. Anyways, as we sat down for dinner at a nice table, my mom told me to go wash my hands before dinner. Not a problem, of course. Time to find the bathroom. As I was looking for the bathroom, a really old white lady with what I can only remember as a Great Gatsby-era gown was on. She grabbed me tightly by the arm and sternly asked me for more chips and salsa. All I could get out was huh? Before she cut into me for a couple seconds about being stupid and learning the language. As this went on, I struggled to get my arms away from her, but she kept her talons clamped onto my arm and raised up out of her seat and demanded to see a manager. Now, I don't remember if she was with someone else or not, but once the manager came over to see what the problem was. That's when the two elderly white people came over and told him I should be fired for talking back to the customer. I couldn't believe it. I'm only 14 years old, in a black and purple soccer uniform. I still had my AstroTurf cleats on. Now that being said, if the restaurant had been soccer-themed, I might have understood. But all the waiters were in white shirts and black vests with black slacks. The manager was in a tailored suit. How did she think I was an employee? Anyways, the manager kept telling them that I was in fact a child and did not work for the restaurant. He had to repeat this multiple times and in different but increasing volumes because she would not let go of me. It took my father and mother to both stand up and race over to the old lady and scold her like an old dog. They explained that I was their kid and that we were here to celebrate, but if the old lady didn't let go of me, then there would be problems. They threatened legal action against the old white woman for helping her for hate crimes, as she was digging her bird-like talons into my arm as she held on to me, and then said they would do the same to the restaurant if they didn't kick her and her lackeys out of the restaurant. She started to get cartoonishly upset and tried to speak, but my mother and father told her in a very stern and threatening voice that his brother and father were both Supreme Court judges, and he couldn't wait to take everything she had. Not true, but he was also in a tailored suit. He even threatened to take her casket when she died. Damn, that was destruction right there. All three of them were then told to leave and never return. As they left, my father then turned and apologized to the whole restaurant and the staff for the racket and the disgusting display of racism the old lady had displayed. I then scanned the restaurant sheepishly, in fear that everyone hated me for this disturbance. I could only see a few smiles and even heard a few tables clapping. The restaurant offered to cover our meal in fear of legal action, but we paid anyways and left a huge tip. I remember asking my dad why my dad tipped so much, and he said that the staff had probably been dealing with that old lady far longer than we had, so it was only right they got compensation for that. My mom asks entitled mother to let go of my hair. Refused and got her life ruined. When I was a kid, I never cut my hair. No matter what, I never cut my hair. So I had a very long, pretty dirty, blonde hair. And as a kid, a lot of people would ask to touch it. And I was fine with it, as long as they had my permission. So when I was 6, my mom took me to a grocery store to buy some things for dinner that night. We got to the store, and my mom got the stuff she needed, but she was missing the bread from the other side of the store. She sent me to go get it since I was fast and small. When I got to the bread, I picked out the brand we would usually buy, and at that time I really liked baguettes and another type of bread. So when I saw the baguettes, I totally forgot my mom was waiting for me and grabbed a loaf and headed back to my mom. So when I was heading back to my mom from the bread aisle, I felt someone pull on my hair, and not gently, no, they yanked it. They pulled so hard at my hair that I thought it was going to come out, and I cried so hard that my mom heard me across the store. It turns out it was a kid about my age who wanted to touch my hair. So his mom, and I say his 40-year-old mother, pulled my hair so her frigging kid could touch it. My mom rushed over and told the lady to let go of me. This is basically how the conversation went. EM is entitled mom, M is my mom, and me is, well, me. Duh. Let my daughter go, says M. Entitled mother says,
My child just wanted to touch her hair. She has very pretty hair.
I said, she pulled on my hair, it hurts. You could have just asked, you can't just pull kids' hair. I can call the police for assault, says my mom. Entitled mom said,
You are harassing me. All I did was let my son touch her hair. I can call the police on you for harassing me and my child.
My mom said, Firstly, I'm not harassing you. You've assaulted my child. And secondly, you can call the police. You will only be making things worse for yourself. And as it turns out, the entitled mother called the police and they took both our statements. The entitled mother had given an over-exaggerated and dramatic report, telling the police, as we would find out later, that I had given consent for her kid to touch my hair, and my mom had come out of nowhere and started harassing the entitled mother. My mother had given the police the actual report from her side. I had been asked to give a report, but I was too scared and tired from the experience to say much. They checked the security footage and saw what actually happened. I don't remember the next part, so bear with me here. My mom decided to press charges and sue the entitled mom for assault, and she was sent to jail for 6 months and fined for providing a false police report as the cherry on top. Well, she got what she deserved. Good on your mom, OP. Anyway, on to the next story. Deadbeat brother crashed my Crown Victoria. Gets a night in jail he won't forget. I, 21 male, have an older brother, Dave, that has always been a jerk to me. There is only a 1-year gap between us, but he liked to beat me up when we were kids. And he acted like anything that was mine was also his. He was also somewhat the golden child, which made me miserable, so no surprise I moved out at 18. My uncle is a now retired police officer, and he took me in after I left home. He even hooked me up with a decommissioned Crown Vic. I absolutely loved that car. I don't know why, but Dave hated the fact I had that car. He drove 3 beater cars into the ground while my Crown Victoria kept chugging along. Well, after his 3rd beater finally died when he drove it into a pole, he asked me to borrow my car. I had a bad feeling and said I wasn't going to do that. He called me entitled and said he needed a car to get to work. I told him to take the bus because I know how he drives, and my Crown Victoria was off limits. My parents called me after that and told me to just lend him my car. I said I won't, no matter what they say. I rely on the car and need it as well since it's my personal transportation. Dave wasn't the only one in the world with a job he needed to get to. My uncle congratulated me for standing up to them and gave me a high five. A few days later, when I got off work, the car wasn't where I parked it. I called my brother's cell, but he didn't pick up. Then I called my parents and asked him if he took my car. They denied it, so I said I was going to call the cops, and then they admitted he borrowed it because he needed it. I told them he better bring it back right now or I'll have the police looking for him. They called me a jerk and then phoned Dave to bring me my car back. He showed up in the parking lot in my car 20 minutes later. I demanded to know how he stole my car, and he held up a set of police Crown Victoria keys he bought online. Some were made universal. I told him if he ever stole my car again, I'd have him arrested. He then had the audacity to ask for a ride home. I told him he'd made me wait in the December cold after stealing my car, so he could walk. He called me a jackass before I drove away. After that, my uncle installed a tracking device in the car. So when Christmas Day came, I was celebrating with family, like every year. The roads were cold and icy, so I had to be very careful while driving. By now, you're probably clued in on the title. Yeah, Dave borrowed my car again during the Christmas party. Apparently, he decided he was going to pick up a friend and figured I wouldn't notice. But I did when I looked out the front window and saw my car was missing. I pulled up the tracking app and saw he was a few miles away. I then called his cell to yell at him. Everyone in the party saw this and asked what was going on. I said Dave stole my car again, and my uncle confirmed it wasn't the first time. Dave told me over the phone to screw off and that he'd be back soon. I said he better not have been drinking, but he just hung up on me. Well, while I was watching the tracker app, the dots stopped and didn't move for a while. Soon we got a panicked call from Dave asking for help. He'd crashed the car because he couldn't handle the icy roads, and he wasn't used to a rear-wheel drive vehicle. So he piled in my parents' minivan and followed the tracker. We found Dave by the road and at Crown Victoria nose-deep in a snow-filled ditch. My uncle was furious, as it was formerly a car of the department, and I was mad as heck at Dave for stealing my car again. My parents wanted me to let it go, but I said enough was enough and I was going to call police. Dave begged me not to because he really had been drinking before he set off and would get a DUI. I said he was going to pay me back for my car then or I'd sue him. Well, as luck would have it, police were already aware of the incident and were driving to check the scene. Someone else had called them, I guess. My parents tried to say I was the one driving the car, and they were just there to help me. I said that wasn't true, and my uncle backed me up. In fact, one of the cops that was there recognized my uncle, and they had a chat. They then went to Dave and asked to see his license, which I then found out was suspended after he'd crashed his previous car. They then breath tested him. He wound up with cuffs slapped on his wrists, while my mother was crying and begging the police not to take him away. But the officer just said that she and my dad could get arrested too for lying to the police, and that shut my parents up. And we got back in the minivan. The Christmas party was ended early, and my parents drove me and my uncle home, since he rode with me. They didn't say much to either of us the whole drive, and just sped away as soon as we were out of their van, and they nearly slipped on the road themselves doing that. My brother was let out of jail the next day, and he looked so scared that he was practically crying. The cops there had roughed him up a little bit while talking about prison and the stuff they'd seen going on there. Dave had actually peed himself during that, and they let him take a shower. And that's when my uncle started cackling up and revealing that he and his friends in the department never filed the DUI, and just the charge for the suspended license, which was about a $600 fine. My uncle said he just wanted to teach Dave a lesson, and this would be the one and only time he'd ever get his help. Dave then apologized to me and said he'd have to pay for my Crown Vic fixed, and he would never touch it again. When it got pulled out of the ditch, the front end damage was actually minor. It needs a new front bumper, a headlight, and a grille. The damage was just superficial, thankfully. My parents have pretty much glossed over the whole incident and acted like it didn't happen. Dave gave me the extra Crown Victoria keys he bought online and said this had taught him a lesson he won't soon forget. Edit. Okay guys, I'm kinda tired of so many griping about how my uncle broke the law by keeping my brother's DUI from ever being filed. I did not consent to that. I did not want him to do it. But by the time I found out, it was already done. My uncle isn't a bad person. He was actually a great cop that believed in people getting second chances. And he was thanked for that many times. Last year I saw a random man recognize my uncle and thank him for putting him on the straight and narrow some years ago. My uncle also detests racism, as do I. I won't deny the cover-up of the DUI by the department was wrong, and I have no idea how they did it, but it's already said and done. I no longer care about that. My brother willingly paid in full for the repairs to my car, and he's keeping out of trouble. I know he could have hurt or offed someone. That much is obvious, but he didn't. My parents should have been arrested for lying to police too, but they weren't. But my father was arrested later anyway because he attacked a man after being called out as a narcissist. And now that situation is what is currently going on. What happened with my brother is basically done now. My father trying to cave in a man's face and say it is far more important at the moment than something that happened weeks ago. I've already heard it all in the comments about police corruption, needing to get my car rekeyed or have the locks changed, or several other measures. I do plan on having the locks changed or rekeyed when I can afford it, but I currently can't afford it. So in the meantime, I'm getting a kill switch and a steering wheel club. For our first story, we've got, "Give me a free piercing! No!" So, afternoon, I swung by a local piercing studio to pick out a new nose stud. It's a relatively small building with a large open lobby. There was a mother and a daughter waiting, and I was perusing the jewelry in the cases. The staff is super friendly there, and one of the girls was showing me different types of jewelry, prices, etc. Just then, two women with a young child came into the building. They asked where the bathroom was, and one of the women took the child in. The other woman started asking the mother and daughter what piercings they were getting for, prices, etc., and then interrupted the girl helping me. I didn't really mind, as I was still browsing. The woman started asking how much it would cost to get her butt pierced. The staff member looked confused and asked her to clarify. The girl said she wanted to either the top of her butt, her rectum, her crack, or one of her butt cheeks pierced. The girl says she doesn't believe they offer piercings in that area, but can ask their manager. She poked her head in one of the closed rooms where the manager was, and then came back and told the woman she was sorry, but we don't offer those. The woman rudely asked her what her qualification and credentials were, why she was working there if she isn't trained, and so on. She then started asking how much it would cost for a septum, a lip piercing, a tongue piercing, and so on. The staff member tried to explain that the prices varied on the type of jewelry she picked, and tried to show her some of the options in the display case. The girl continued to ask how much it would cost. The staff member finally got her a catalog of jewelry and asked her to sit while she continued to help me. The other woman and her young son finally came out of the bathroom and told the woman they would wait in the car, and they left. The woman is loudly complaining to the mother and the young child about how she can't believe they don't do butt piercings, while the kid sits there looking absolutely horrified. I should note, the woman was acting somewhat erratic throughout the story, either loudly complaining, pacing, or looking agitated and kicking at the chairs. The manager came out of the room and asked what he could help her with. The girl said she was ready to get a septum piercing now. He tried to explain that there was a waiting list and she had to sign in, but she got angry and said she needed to get it in the next 15 minutes. He told her if she registered right now, he could probably get her done in 15 to 20 minutes. She pointed out that the earring she wanted, and he told her it would be $120. The woman looks at him blankly and says, "I have $40. The manager looks confused and again says, "It's $120. The woman looks at him blankly and says, "I have $40 again." Rinse and repeat. She doesn't understand why the frick it's so expensive. She only has $40 and will not be paying more. The manager points to cheaper earrings and says that a couple of them were only $30. She starts to look somewhat calmer until he says the total would be $50. She blows up again and he explains that the piercing itself has a $20 service fee. She says nothing, but calmly turns and opens one of the closed doors where another staff member is doing a piercing. He starts to ask what she's doing, and she says she needs him to pierce her right now, right away, as the manager was trying to rip her off. At this point, he simply closes and locks the door, and she loses it. She is yelling, crying, waving her two $20 bills around in the air, as me, the staff, the mom and daughter waiting are just staring in shock, watching as this grown-ass woman throws a fit. She then stops, turns, and walks out the door as if nothing happened. We all kind of laugh nervously and start talking about how weird that was, when the door opens again. And guess who? It's this lady. The chick stands there as calm as anything and says, "Hello, I'm here to get a tattoo." The manager looks at her, shocked, and says, "We don't offer tattoos. And at this point, I'm going to have to ask you to leave, as you are disturbing our customers." She starts screaming that she knows they offer tattoos, and they're hiding it from her just because she only has $40. They discriminate against poor people, and so on. She says she needs a tat or a piercing today, and they shouldn't refuse service just because someone can't pay. She then throws a stack of magazines off the table and leaves. Again, we all look at each other in shock. I eventually bought a couple of earrings and left a nice big tip for the poor staff, and continued to look utterly bewildered. I leave, and I'm opening the door to my car when someone calls out, and I see this lady walking towards me. She asks if I have $100. I do not engage. I just shake my head and try to get in my car. She grabs my arm and says if I'm shopping there, I must be rich, and I'm greedy not to help a woman out in need. I tell her I'm not rich, and indicated to my duct-taped windows on my car. I hold up my pepper spray and say, "Touch me again, and I'll spray. And if you don't leave in the next 10 seconds, I am calling the cops." She freaking shrieks and runs back to her car fuming. So, that's that. Not as crazy as some of the stories out there, but I've actually never had a Karen experience before, and after years of reading this subreddit, I was pretty excited to contribute for an anonymous account, in case this crazy lady reads it. Enjoy your evenings and keep an eye out for Karens, y'all. Neighbor pointed a gun at my golden retriever Sam. I had to step in. I have this daily routine of walking my golden retriever Sam around the block every morning. Sam is the sweetest boy, full of love and always ready to play. His idea of a threat is the vacuum cleaner, not a living creature. Sam is the most gentle soul you'll ever meet. The kind of dog who loves belly rubs and fetch more than anything else in the world. He's also never hurt a fly, let alone hurt another human being. This morning, our peaceful routine turned into a nightmare. As we were doing our usual round, we just encountered our usually reclusive neighbor, Mr. X. Now, Mr. X has always been a little off-putting, but what he did today was beyond my wildest imagination. As we passed by, Sam wagged his tail, trotting slightly towards Mr. X in his usual friendly way. Out of nowhere, Mr. X kicked Sam violently, causing Sam to cry out. I was shocked, to say the least. I yelled at Mr. X, warning him to stay away from Sam. In response, he started ranting about filthy animals. But then it got worse. He pulled out a handgun and pointed it at Sam. I was terrified, but there was no way I was letting that happen to my boy. Without thinking twice, I put myself between Sam and the gun, shielding him. I shouted at Mr. X, trying to de-escalate the situation and attract attention. Thankfully, the commotion had drawn a crowd of other neighbors, who immediately called police. The police arrived swiftly and managed to disarm Mr. X without anyone getting hurt. I am totally pressing charges for animal cruelty and assault, and Sam's at the vet right now getting checked over. He's a little shaken, but seems okay. I still can't believe I had to step in to protect Sam from a gun-wielding neighbor. The level of entitlement some people exhibit is simply horrifying. Anyway, just needed to share this. Please, always keep an eye out for your pets. They depend on us to keep them safe. And for our last story today, we've got maybe try practicing what you preach? Hi gang, it's a fine day and GF and me are doing some shopping together. All goes well until we reach the tills. We're both behind our car, unload our stuff, and eventually my GF reaches over to grab a divider to place this behind our stuff. Easy, right? If only. The next moment we feel a cart shoved into our behinds, and while I grab my GF's wrist to let her know I got this, I put my foot down and give the cart a small shove, not too excessive. When I noticed it hit something, I press for a bit, then I let go. We briefly look at each other with a duh look on our faces. The next moment, some bald dude tries to shove my girlfriend away. Yeah, bad move. She more or less shoves him back with her shoulder, using the till for more leverage. This sort of set him off. Sorry for wanting to go in front of you. I need that divider. And he once again makes a move. But this time my GF figures whatever, and she makes some room, which meant she's now also snuggling more up to me. Heh, no complaints here. The couple before us all put their stuff back in the cart. In the Netherlands, we don't usually bag stuff at the tills themselves, and get ready to pay when this happens. Bald guy's like, excuse me, but if you two would move somewhat forward, other people would have room to put their stuff on the band. What the frick? Excuse me, but I respect people's privacy. Those two people, gesturing forward, don't need prying eyes while they're paying. The bald guy now starts to iterate my comments. Probably to some other people. I didn't look back while I said this, which is when my girlfriend now suddenly grabbed my wrist for a moment to let me know, I got this. She turns around. Maybe try practicing what you preach. It doesn't help your credibility if you shove your cart into people's behinds and then try to act as if you have better manners than them. Oh dear. What did you say, girlie? It's here when I notice several tattoos on the guy, and now I'm a little worried. Not so much for my GF, but that this may get out of hand. The girlfriend now grabs her phone. Doesn't do anything with it, but I can see that because I'm behind her. She pushes herself a little more against Baldy's cart behind us and acts as if she's filming. This, she points to the cart now pushing against her waist, can be explained as sexual harassment. You got 10 seconds, and I'm going to cry sexual assault on you. Thing about the Netherlands, and I'm not making this up, the sentencing here is poor. Unless, of course, you commit the wrong kind of crimes. The one that can make the country look bad, with enough attention. And this is just my own personal bias, but I mean, murder happens everywhere, right? It's not our government's fault that murderers sometimes walk out between 6 or 12 years. And it's not the judge's fault, who can't be elected over here, that the government makes up such weird laws, right? Alas, back to our story. Guess what kind of crime does fit the narrative? Ha ha. As for why the Baldies seem to know, your guess is as good as ours. As why my girlfriend seemed to know, now your guess is as good as mine. But he and several people behind him suddenly bolted out of there, while leaving their stuff on the band. First, the group made their way towards the back of the store. The next moment, my girlfriend saw them exiting the store using another aisle while we were paying for our goods. We paid for our stuff, the cashier sighed because she now had quite a lot of crud to deal with. But when our girlfriend saw a 6-pack of orange juice, she told the cashier she wouldn't mind buying that. She even got 50 cents off because she was now considered second-hand. Sweet. Some people, of course. It's also possible that they did not like the idea of getting caught on camera, I suppose. But still, some people. Maybe try to display some valor before preaching it? Dumbass. Edit/updates. Some people rightfully mention that this seems a bit extreme, and normally I'd agree. Thing is, we're talking about a country where the police hardly show up anymore. And when they do, you shouldn't expect many results. For example, when a vlogger and his cronies harass a whole neighborhood and the police are eventually called, said vlogger walks over to a police car, it gets taped and streamed. All while the police do is ask him to please get off the car. Don't take my word on that. Use YouTube, trade in vlogger Zandam, Politile audio. So when you can get out of a hostile situation, you take it, period. Different countries, different police, different ways of survival. Yeah, some modern countries can be this bad. Hello there everyone, how you doing today? I hope you're all well. Today we're going into r/entitled parents, inheritance edition. Because we're gonna go over some stories where an inheritance destroys families, although most of them already had shaky foundations. If you enjoy, like and subscribe, leave a comment with your thoughts down below, and without further ado, let's get started, shall we? My mother decided my inheritance won't pay for my college after I told her she should get a VPN. My mother bought an Android TV box that can stream any new show or movie for free, quote-unquote, which I told her was technically illegal, but her response was,
"Streaming isn't illegal because we're downloading the content."
And I said, "Aight," and left it. Turns out our internet service provider isn't too keen on this, though, and throttles our whole network to unbearable speeds when the box is in use. However, the box will hog all the throttled bandwidth, so the movie will still stream, but every other device will be kicked off the network. When I told my mother about this, or asked them to just pause for a bit so I'm able to get my work done, her response is always,
"I pay for the internet, and it seems to be working, so you can deal with not having internet while I'm watching TV."
I've been dealing with this for 2 weeks now. I was disqualified from 2 job interview technical tests, had to plead to take a midterm with my professor, and often get booted when I'm on a call with my GF, whom is long distance, going to school, and we only get 2 or 3 hours to talk a day. When they left for a bit today, I did some troubleshooting and found out that a VPN fixes this problem. So when they came back, I told her a VPN fixes the problem, and they should use one anyway since their activities are illicit, and it also helps keep our information safe. Her response, unsurprisingly, was,
I bought the box to stop paying for subscriptions. I'm not going to pay for something when the TV works just fine. You can live without the internet.
I thought she'd at least be reasonable, and I was going to offer to pay for half the yearly subscription to ExpressVPN, but instead I was just shocked and left. Shortly after, she came to me and told me that I should just pay for the VPN, because I'm the one who would be using it anyway. I told her that's not how it works. I wouldn't be using it, but I'll split the cost with her. She didn't like that answer because then she started to go off saying,
You're 22 and you don't pay for anything. You should start at least paying for rent and to use our internet.
Now, I know that statement doesn't sound too bad, Reddit, and I agree. Taken out of context, it's probably fine. But here is some background for context. My parents told me I can live rent-free till I graduate college, which led me to go to the local university to save money and not have to pay for room and board. My tuition, on the other hand, is just barely covered through a small sum of money my grandfather left me when he passed. But the account holder's name is my mother's. If that doesn't cover my tuition, I would pay it myself out of pocket. My brother, on the other hand, moved out to go to college, and his financials are a whole different story. My mother fully pays for his tuition, room and board, and groceries so he doesn't have to work while he goes to school. The tuition and room and board together for him are almost 3 times what my tuition alone costs. And yet she pays that without batting an eye. Anyways, to continue the story. My mother continued going off, telling me that starting now I'll have to pay rent. It'll be $1,200 a month, and I have to pay for the VPN so I can access the internet. Also, I'll have to pay for the internet since you're the only one who uses it anyway. And she finished off her list of demands by stating,
Also, the trust won't be covering your tuition anymore, so you need to pay me back the $26,000 that it's paid so far.
I was just silent and left. I broke down into tears when I got into my car and started driving. I haven't talked to her since, and I'm just fuming that she wouldn't hold my inheritance random. I have 2 months till I graduate, and I was planning to just yeet out of there the day I do. But every month it's something else that's my fault and I have to pay for. It started off with groceries. I now buy over half the groceries and make dinner for me and my parents 4 days a week. Because she said,
you should start making us dinner since you should learn how to cook. Then when I get my tax refund,
she made me give her half of it because
I did your taxes, so I deserve your tax refund.
Which I didn't ask her to do. I just came home from work one day and she had already filed them. Same thing with the stimulus checks during COVID.
You should have got the stimulus checks. It should be mine since I'm your mother.
And they didn't qualify because their income was too much. Me and my father are going to see a show tonight. He sees the stark contrast in the way she treats me compared to my brother, and has even told me before that, I know she treats you differently than everyone else. And you just need to not cause a ruckus or stir anything with your mother, and just leave as soon as you graduate. But he actually won't stand up to oppose her on anything, so whatever she says, go. Damn, I'm sorry to hear that, OP. I wish you luck in your future endeavors. Hopefully you can get out of your asshole of a mother's roof. My mom feels entitled to my inheritance money. She wants to use it to put a down payment on a house. I only found out about it 6 years later because I looked into a cabinet in our house and did some research. I, a 24 female, found out earlier this year that I was supposed to receive around $160K in inheritance money when my father passed away. I found out by looking into a cabinet in our house. I was compelled to do so because my mother acts rich or poor whenever it suits her, along with other strange behavior. I found a letter that was addressed specifically to me from the life insurance company that had my inheritance. All I needed to do was submit some paperwork and they'd give me a check. I'm not sure how, but my mother somehow submitted documents for me and even cashed the check that was in my name. I'm also not sure why she felt entitled to it when she got $500K in inheritance herself. When I confronted her about it, she obviously did not take it well. She was very adamant that it's her money until I informed her that, after I found the documents, I called the life insurance company and received photocopies of the check. She submitted documents and so on. After I told her that, she tried negotiating with me, stating that she can give me $10K to start with, and then $2K every month. I said no, she will guilt me into delaying her payments if we go that route. She tells me she'll be homeless if I get all the money at once. I eventually make her show me her bank statements. As far as I know, she has around $330K. In addition, she's been making 6 figures with her job for the past 3 years. Homeless my ass. I told her I need a good amount of money if I want to have any chance of moving out. I wanted to move out with my friend, but my mom took way too long to give me any money. I received $50K from her. Like a week or so later, she started asking if she could borrow $20K for a month. She said she needs it in her bank account so the lender can approve of the condo or house she wants to buy. She asked if I would be okay, and I stupidly told her that I'd be getting grants from school too. Then she wanted to borrow $20K on top of the grant money, but passively aggressively mentioning it whenever she could. A few weeks later, she forced me to go with her to the bank to withdraw $20K. This was on October 3rd. On November 23rd, I asked her to give me $2K. I told her it's been almost 2 months and I want a portion of it back via text. She gives me the silent treatment in person and text. The next day I try calling her and she starts crying hysterically and says,
I knew I should have trusted you with money. What are you doing? Drugs? Are you gambling? Why are you so mean? You ruined my holiday. You've ruined my life. You're abnormal. You're just doing this because you're behind in your life and you're desperate. You don't have utilities to pay for. I spent so much money on food in the past month.
I'm not exaggerating when I say I've never told her to buy me food or make me food, but she always uses it as a form of guilt. A couple of days later, we have a 4-hour argument. During this argument, I was so disgusted with her behavior that I told her I want nothing to do with her. A couple days after that, to my surprise, she comes into my room and asks me to hug her. She starts crying and says she just suppresses her thoughts and feelings. She says she'll give me $500 now and then $500 on December 22nd. What the hell? I swallowed my anger for a couple of days, but then I could no longer hold it in. I wasn't giving her the silent treatment, but I wasn't looking at her or initiating in any form of talking. She notices this and asks what's wrong. She goes,
It's the money, isn't it?
And then repeats the same thing she did last time.
Are you gambling? You have no utilities.
And so on. And again, she made it very clear she wants to buy a condo or a house. I can't remember which. I told her I'm mad at her because you told me you needed $20K for a month. It's been over 2 months and now you're still not giving it. So you lied. After this, she started acting like she was going to cry. She left the house and then transferred another $500. I haven't talked to her since. It infuriates me that she thinks she's entitled to this money. Why do you need a house? You're getting old and you're single. Secondly, it was not only was this the money in your account in the first place, because you committed fraud, but now I let you borrow money and you're going to treat it like it's an allowance? It's my money. Legally. Get over it. You've already got $500K before you took my money. Since I was 18, I've been working minimum wage jobs. She's made it clear as day that she thinks her needs are way above mine. I don't have utilities. I don't have a career yet, so I'm less important. Even if that's factually true, I'm your child, and that money is legally mine. Also, I just want to share this example of her behavior I just remembered. When I was 19, I was working at a tutoring place, in addition to a restaurant, while taking 16 units in college with no car. I was leaving the house one day to get a haircut. My mom then asked me, "Where are you going?" I told her I'm going to get a haircut. She then says verbatim,
"Really? You're supposed to be using that money to help me."
That's how entitled she is. Like, oh my god. At this point, she received $660K, while her child, who's a full-time student with 2 jobs and no car, is not important enough to use that money they earned from their job to get a haircut. I'm so mad, and I just have a huge problem with getting this taken care of, because I hate making people uncomfortable. This is also why I cannot blindside a person by randomly bringing the issue up. I usually have to text them first. But I'm starting to think that's never a good idea. Ugh. First update. I had a consultation with a lawyer yesterday, and they said it seems like an open and shut case. They told me to see if I can do a little more digging in regard to my dad's assets before he passed, and talk to the insurance company to see what my options are, and to call him back on the 17th. Update 2. Not sure if many people will see this, but I've contacted 5 law firms so far for consultations, and will be discussing everything with them. I'm still absolutely terrified of going through with anything, but I'm trying to push myself through. I'm terrified I'm not deserving of the money, and that I'm a terrible person for doing this. Don't feel bad, OP. Your mother's an asshole. And assholes get hemorrhoids. You know what? Actually, your mother's a hemorrhoid. She has no use. Entitled aunt thinks she's entitled to my inheritance that I don't even have yet. Oh boy, where to begin? Now context, when I was 1, my great-granddad and my dad's side died from old age. He was 101. He fought in the Falklands conflict and had a lot of money invested into British stock and loved to collect wine. Now, I was his only great-grandchild, and he loved me in the short period between my birth and his death, and he said he wanted me to remember him by. So in his will, he states that when I'm 18, I'm 15 now, I'll receive something from him. Currently, no one knows what it is except my granddad, and he won't tell. He respected my dad too much. I know Ia is my dad's younger sister, and she is an entitled witch. She tried to throw away all my dad's childhood belongings because
I need room for my stuff,
and can only put it in
his room as mine is full.
Thank God my granddad shut her down, as my dad has some pretty valuable stuff from the 80s. This was 2 years ago, and we've had no contact since. I might also add that she lives in Yorkshire, so I hardly see her. Yesterday around 9 p.m. I received a phone call from her. This is the conversation of memory. Hello?
Hi, it's your favorite aunt.
Internally, of course. Hi, how are you?
Good. Anyway, I have a favor.
Me, who was suspicious, said what?
Well, I was thinking that since you're too young, since you never met him,
Can I have your inheritance?
I start laughing maniacally.
Excuse me, I'm not joking. You don't need it. I do. I'm his oldest grandchild.
She isn't.
I deserve it. Didn't my brother teach you to respect your elders, or is he being effing abusive and neglectful?
No, he loves me, and I don't know what it is I have 3 years to wait. Just stop. Why on earth do you think you're entitled to it?
You adorable, spoiled effing fatso! You do what I say!
At this point, my dad walks in, and I put her on speaker.
Since I am your aunt, I could kill you, and no one would care. You are an effing disgrace to this family, and we all effing hate you.
I calmly reply my dad's here and she's on speaker. And my dad yells the following.
Do you think it's okay to say that to a teen? You're the spoiled one. It's not his or my fault you wasted the 10 grand he left you on alcohol and clothes. So frick off. Never contact us again, and I will be speaking to Granddad about this.
He calls my granddad, and for a few hours later, my granddad calls him back saying he's dealt with her, and has even cut her from his will. I don't know why she feels entitled to this. Honestly, I kinda don't know if I want it. Because this aunt isn't the first time someone has tried to take my inheritance I can't touch yet. I don't know if it's worth the hassle. I will update, but not on what I get. Have a lovely day. Edit. I know about the confusion, but there is a Yorkshire regiment in World War II in Falklands. Thank you for the kind Reddit user who found it. His comments down below. And then insert obligatory thanks stranger for first gold. HOA sells non-HOA house. So I'll start by saying this happened to a friend of mine a few years ago, so I don't know all the details. I'll spare the boring details, but we lived in a small rural farming community that has been growing quite rapidly lately. A lot of farmers are growing old and selling their farmland. There are 2 ways to do this. They can either split it into lots and sell it a piece at a time. This typically brings in more money, but is a much slower process. Then they could sell the whole thing at once. Again, faster process, less money. This particular farmer decided to sell his land in lots because it was in a developing neighborhood, and he could make a much larger profit doing it that way. My friend bought in a few lots and built a very nice house on it. Then a large company came in and bought most of the remaining lots and built a subdivision on the land. In order to keep everything in a consistent look, they themed the properties after my friend's place. He was a lot nicer, obviously. He didn't cheap out on it like they did, but they had a similar style to his. He didn't mind because that just raised his property value even more. Now, it is important to note that my friend basically lived right in the center of the subdivision. He bought a place in the middle of the property because of its view. Probably not the best idea in retrospect. The people who built the subdivision also founded an HOA. My friend was invited to join on multiple occasions, but he always refused for obvious reasons. Because of some legal clauses about pre-existing properties, he wasn't required to join, even though he was in the center of the subdivision. He did maintain a pretty good relationship with the HOA president, and some members of the community as well. He was regularly invited to HOA events, and sometimes actually took them up on the offer. He enjoyed it, and then a new president took over the HOA. I guess the new president didn't really do any research because he just assumed that my friend was part of the HOA. He contacted my friend about several violations that he noticed along with late fees due to the HOA. When my friend tried to explain he wasn't a part of the HOA, the new president just shooed him off and ignored him. My friend probably just ignored all the fees, fines, and so on. Now, my friend was a winter bird. For anyone who doesn't know what that means, it's a fancy way of saying someone that lives in the south during the winter and the north during the summer. They typically own 2 houses, or sometimes they've retired and jump around between family members that are happy to take care of them for that time. My friend in particular was a doctor who worked for a hospital here in the summer months and a hospital in the south in the winter months. So it all worked out. So saying this, you could probably imagine the horror on his face when he came home and found all of his locks changed and another family living in his house. The HOA president knew he traveled south every year, so he waited until he was gone, then sent an eviction notice for all his late fines. He had a friend of his own a realty firm, sell the house, and moved in a new family, all while my friend was gone. My friend contacted a lawyer friend from back in the south and started the process of suing the HOA. Big city lawyer versus small town HOA. Who was absolutely in the wrong? Guess who won? Did I mention the family that moved into my friend's house joined in as well? They also sued the HOA because they had to be relocated on short notice, and they had taken out a very hefty loan for that property. I don't know exactly what happened, but I know the HOA president lost his house and skipped town. I'm guessing he probably took the brunt of the attack. Entitled Crazy HOA President. Just before leaving active duty military, after almost 10 years, my wife and I bought a large house in my hometown, on the coast in a nice neighborhood with an HOA. I had never lived in an HOA before and never knew how bad, cliquey, or political it could be. Not long after we moved in, the letters started about having a boat in our driveway. Mind you, we lived not 100 yards from the water. So we complied and placed it in a local marina. After living there about 2 years, the neighbors we had, which were all really great, moved and a new older couple moved in. They were really nice at first, letting my children swim in their pool, sharing an adult beverage in the evening, talking on the fence, so on. And then it happened. The wife ran for and became the new HOA president. She started walking around the neighborhood and taking notes. She would walk into people's yards and make corrections, and even go so far as to trespass into people's backyards, gated or not, and take pictures of violations and send out letters. I came home one time to find her on my back porch looking at things and taking pictures. I was a police officer at the time, and while trying to be nice, informed her she could get into a lot of trouble for what she was doing. She tried to tell me as an HOA president she was entitled to go into people's private property and even their houses to inspect them if need be. I informed her of the state and federal laws against this, and it started a war. I immediately started receiving $100 fines for very minor issues with my home. I fixed the issues immediately and never had to pay the fines with the HOA property management company, but did file complaints. The HOA PM company never did anything about the complaints. And then it happened. I also owned a small business for which I had a truck and trailer I would use across the business day. I had this parked in front of the house one day, and she took a picture of it. According to HOA rules, it was not allowed to be there overnight, and never was. I received a letter and a fine for $100 stating that the vehicle had been parked there overnight. This time I asked for a review with the HOA board of directors, the PM company, the attorney, and my attorney. This was going to cost the HOA, PM company, and all involved much more than $100 in time and money. At this meeting, I asked the HOA president to present evidence other than one picture that this vehicle was here more than 24 hours, with time and date stamps, and she could not. I then asked for the $100 to be dropped. The HOA board and PM company refused. I was publicly berated by the HOA president in front of the board, and my attorney saying I should be a good soldier and do as I was told by the HOA board and obey the rules. At this point, my attorney and I had enough evidence of harassment due to recording the conversation. We then informed everyone in the room that we'd been recording everyone, and this inflamed them more, and they threatened to call the police for violating the law. In our state, it was more than legal and well within our rights. We then informed them we would be filing a lawsuit which was sure to win out and would bankrupt the HOA. According to state law and the HOA bylaws, in the event the HOA ceased to exist or became bankrupt, each and every one of the 35 houses in the HOA would have their mortgages immediately due and payable. Most people don't know this exists in a lot of HOA covenants. We just got up and walked out of the meeting and said we think this settles the matter and hope there'll be no further fines, threats, harassment, and so on. I had very good friends in the neighborhood and did not want to see their families affected. About a month later, the HOA had elections for a new HOA board. I informed several people in the neighborhood I would be running for HOA board president. We got together on the night of the board meeting and election we attended, and there were only about 10 people in there to vote. There were 6 people, along with myself, who voted for me. But miraculously, the incumbent HOA president had a unanimous vote when property management company chair counted the votes. Right there in the meeting, I asked all 6 people who voted for me to raise their hand with me, and that was 7. And the PM chair had no answer, since it had already been entered into the corporate minutes. I said it would be fine. Let it stand, and then informed everyone in the room about the previous meeting, mortgages, suing the HOA, and now calling the state attorney general's office. Within a short time, the property management company was changed out. The HOA president was replaced with a nice level-headed gentleman, and I never ever so much as heard a peep from the HOA ever again. I played by the rules more or less, but eventually sold the house and moved on. Never mess with a paratrooper. And now for the title story. Vindictive ex-wife illegally signed application to local HOA in my name. I'll start this off by saying my ex isn't vindictive as hell. We've been fully divorced since right about the pandemic started. We sold the house we shared, and I didn't have to pay her alimony because she cheated and we were in at-fault state. It was messy since D-Day. All the stereotypes. First the sobbing, and then the trickle truth saying, "I love you. It was just one time. Okay, it was 2 years." And then the gaslighting followed by, "I'm gonna take you for everything," before packing her shit and walking out. I feel like I never really knew the woman my ex was in all the time we were together. We were married 5 years and together for 7, and in 2 of those 5 married years she had affairs with 3 other men. The final one being a foreign businessman of some sort, from what I could find out. Yes, I got tested for STDs and was thankfully negative. Yes, she got pregnant by the final affair partner. And no, I didn't sign the birth certificate because I found out about all the affairs before the baby was born, thanks to a call from the first affair partner. My ex tried to go full scorched earth on me, but since we live in, and were married in, an at-fault state, she lost. We didn't pay equally into our house, and the equity was divided 70-30, so I got a pretty good cash payout when I sold our marital home, to put as a down payment on a different home closer to my job. It's a bit of a downgrade, but suits a single guy in his 30s like me just fine.
My ex did show up to my house once, but I refused to let her in. She complained at me that I'd financially ruined her in the divorce. I said that she was fully willing to do that to me first, and she had the audacity to say that it should have been my life screwed over, not hers. I laughed so hard and said that it was karma. She yelled that she'd sue me for what was rightfully hers, and I said, if she was going to sue me, then go ahead, sue me. It'd end up the same way in court because she has nothing but a false sob story. She was the cheater, not me. I'm no angel, but I didn't do anything to her. And she was the one who ruined our marriage. She then said she'd tell everyone she could that I abused her. And I said I'd sue her for defamation if she did. And I was recording our current interaction and had those words saved to my phone. She went wide-eyed and her jaw dropped. The look people are calling the surprised Pikachu face. Then I asked why she was there, if not to try and make trouble, because she had a new man in her life that knocked her up. She just huffed at me and said he isn't around much, and she's stuck in a tiny apartment, living off his child support till he comes back. It was immature of me, I know, but I did the bit of playing the world's smallest violin. She yelled at me for me to go sodomize myself, and I yelled back that I'd sooner do that than her any time. She raged at me, and then got in her car to leave. I haven't seen her since. There's an HOA in my neighborhood, but I was not legally obligated to join it, because the last owner in my house was not a member. I made sure of that through a real estate lawyer as well. The HOA had no grounds to force me to join, and were not happy about it. The HOA president would show up with forms every week for the first month, demanding I sign them. And then she threatened to take me to court, to which I had to get a cease and desist sent to her from my lawyer to make her stop that. So she started harassing me by looking for any infraction she possibly could to report to the city. An inspector came out several times and found nothing wrong. In fact, I offered one of them a burger, and while grilling, and they graciously accepted. Did I mention the HOA hates barbecues and parties that aren't approved in advance? Well, they do. And I like to grill when the weather is good, and my neighbors actually love me for it because I invite them over. I had the police called on me several times for noise complaints because I was playing music on a Saturday afternoon while having my friends over. The HOA president and I caught trespassing once she was trying to peer into my windows. I called the police, but she denied ever doing it, so I got cameras, and she hasn't trespassed since. But I still got repeated passive-aggressive letters saying my cameras were not an approved addition to my house. Some months ago, I started getting letters for fines in the mail, and when I contacted the HOA, their representative claimed they had on record that I joined, and needed to pay all fines effective immediately. I told them that was not possible. They then emailed a scanned copy of all forms, and they had a signature on them, but it was not mine. It was similar in some ways, and I recognized right away that as being my ex's handwriting. She knew what my signature looked like, but it was a loose imitation at best. I got in touch with a lawyer right away over the forged signature, but the HOA still demanded to go to court, and it took 7 months before that happened. Meanwhile, they were stacking unpaid fines against me weekly, and were threatening to put a lien on my house. We went to court, and the HOA president looked very smug. But my lawyer pointed out how the signature wasn't the same as mine, and was very inconsistent in the various forms. I'd never allowed the HOA president into my house, and I've never requested the forms. The idiot HOA president actually slammed her palm on the table and said it was still binding. But when pressed where the fraudulent signature came from, she admitted my ex-wife called the HOA, and they sent her the forms, and then got them back in the mail signed. But then she actually claimed that she thought I'd signed them. The judge looked at her and asked if she was serious. She confirmed she was.
The judge then asked how a woman I was no longer married to, that had never even lived with me in my current residence, was supposed to have any bearing on whether or not I joined her HOA. She went quiet, and I could see the, "oh shit," look on her face as the hamster wheels were turning, and she seemed to finally mentally put the pieces together. My lawyer then counterclaimed what the HOA did was blatant fraud and legal actions must be taken. And oh boy, were they. I countersued the HOA for the emotional distress of the harassment I'd gotten since moving in, which I had lots of proof of. That won me about 10 grand after lawyer fees that I decided to put towards my mortgage. The HOA president was removed from a throne as well. I like to think she was kicking and screaming. She was also slapped with a hefty fine. I've seen her outside a few times, and she always looks at me like I'm the devil. The HOA itself had to pay all of my legal fees, too. I wanted to go after my ex for forging my signature, but can't because not long after she forged my signature on those forms, she apparently left the country to be with her third affair partner. She's somewhere in Europe from what I can see on the final posts of her Facebook before she disappeared. So I can't do anything against her unless she ever returns to the US. So that was a wash. I'm not getting letters from the HOA anymore, though, and the new president has promised to keep things completely cordial from now on. I still don't feel like I got much of a win in this, though. Other than the 10K payout, it all felt like a huge waste of time. My wife remorselessly cheated on me and also got pregnant from her affair partner. For those who remember me, I'm the guy whose wife made our kids release a wild bunny in the middle of the yard after I advised her to have the kids take it to the bushes to release it safely. A hawk took the bunny right in front of both of our children, 4 and 5 years old at the time, and they freaked out on their mother, then came running back to me in tears. Our kids started calling their mother the bunny killer. That name seems apt now, and other people called her out that well after her affair got out. What happened with that poor bunny is ancient history compared to what I have to tell now. I'm speaking as a free man after finishing a divorce a couple months ago. This is going to be pretty long and complicated, so buckle up, and yes, I'll include a TLDR. I did show my wife the original Reddit post, and she was very angry with me. So much so it caused a bad fight, and after it I got the silent treatment for another week. I tried to make my kids stop mistreating their mother after the bunny incident, even with being punished by small groundings and timeouts. But the bunny killer nickname kept coming back every time our kids got angry with their mother. My wife let up on her cold shoulder routine after a couple of weeks and conceded that she should have listened to me about the bunny and should have taken it to the bushes like I said. She claimed that she just felt like she needed to defend herself because she didn't want to be wrong. I accepted that apology and apologized myself for making the Reddit post. I wanted to go to marriage counseling, but she refused. She acted like there was nothing wrong with our marriage. And I decided not to push the issue further, since things were seemingly getting along better. But after a few weeks, my eldest came to me saying she wanted to tell me something. There was another reason why she was so mad at her mother than just the bunny, but she was scared to tell me. I comforted her and told her she could tell me anything. Well, what she said shocked me and changed everything in an instant. She said that for months Mama had been bringing over a man some Saturdays while I was at work, and had referred to him as her special friend. She got our kids to keep quiet about it by various means of bribery, but my eldest realized that something was very wrong with it, and spent some time working up the courage to tell me. Kids know things and pick up on stuff quickly.
I really dislike it when people dismiss those facts. I had noticed my wife acting a little bit differently lately. She had been more short with everyone, especially the kids. I tried talking to her about it when I showed her my first post, and she just went off on me about any little thing she could think of. Insulted my appearance, my character, my habits, even my side of the family. She even brought up that I used to smoke. I quit over 10 years ago. Then she resorted to locking me out of our bedroom and crying so loudly you could hear it all over the house. So when my eldest came to me, I ended up putting 2 and 2 together. She was cheating, and her behavior was very similar to the mood swings she had while pregnant with both of our children. Similar, I say, because it was even worse. From what I've gathered searching online and what friends and even a counselor have told me, my wife was both very moody from hormones and projecting because of her infidelity. I can't claim to be an expert in psychology, but it does seem to make sense. I wanted it all to be a misunderstanding, but I quickly ordered and set up a few hidden cameras without anyone knowing. I had them delivered to my work so no one at home would see them. Then I set them up on a day my wife went out to have a girls' night with her friends. It was very easy to hook them up and connect them to the Wi-Fi. In just a few short hours, I could monitor every part of the house from my home PC, laptop, and work PC. At first, I was worried I might have been going overboard. I thought if I turned out I was wrong, then I could remove the cameras, and no one would ever know. But no, my worst fears were confirmed, as I got plenty of evidence in just the first week. The man my wife had taken as an affair partner is a former colleague of hers. I remembered him quite well, as I seemed close with my wife whenever I met him at various job functions. My wife quit her job years ago to be a full-time mom after getting pregnant with our first. It was a mutual decision for us both at the time. My wife stayed connected with her former co-workers, as they were her best friends, but not anymore. What I'm about to tell you has pretty much made her hated by everyone. Firstly, the affair partner is younger than my wife, by about a decade. She mentored him at her former job to fill her position when she left, and the two of them stayed close, very close, as you can tell. My wife and I are both over 40, but you wouldn't know it from looking at her. She's positively stunning. She got mistaken as someone in her 20s quite a lot, and I guess she capitalized on that. I ended up confiding to my sister about what was going on, and showed her the footage from the nanny cams. She told me she suspected for a while, and said she'd seen my wife once at a local bar getting a bit too close with a man that wasn't me. But they never kissed or anything while she was watching, just lots of touching on the shoulders and lower back. And since she wasn't sure, she didn't tell me sooner. I ended up ordering a GPS tracker as well, and after I got it working, I hid it in the trunk of my wife's car. My sister and her husband agreed to help me, and followed the tracker on my wife's next supposed night out with friends. She went to a completely different place, 20 miles further away, where she usually goes, and from there she met up with the affair partner. My sister and brother-in-law observed them for some time from their car, and noticed the affair partner kept rubbing the belly while they were talking, and they recorded video of this too. When I saw the footage, I knew she had to be pregnant with his baby, since she was so moody at home. My sister and brother-in-law had to calm me down, because I turned into a complete mess. I wanted to self-medicate with alcohol, but my sister very correctly told me that drinking was the worst thing I could do at the moment. Later, I decided to take a leave from work,
but told my wife I was actually going on a business trip. She couldn't have been more excited about it, and didn't try very hard to hide her glee that I'd be leaving for a while. Who is this woman? She's certainly not the one I married over 20 years ago, right? Did someone who looks exactly like her just take her place one day? Is she an alien from the pod people? Did I ever really know her? The more I thought about it, the less it made sense to me. So my end conclusion that was trying to make sense of anything wouldn't do me any good. I had cameras all over the house, and my sister and brother-in-law agreed to take my kids for a few days, because they loved visiting auntie and uncle in the city. This gave my wife the exact opening she wanted. She called affair partners only a few hours after I left, and he showed up that evening to spend the night. I won't go into any detail about what they did around the house. You can fill in the blanks yourself. But on top of that, they were joking about me continuously. They openly talked about their baby and how they needed to figure out what to do before her belly starts to show, as she was already over 3 months along by then, and there was no way it could be passed off as mine. Affair partner is a different race from me, so it'd be pretty easy to tell the baby wouldn't be mine from birth. My wife brushed affair partner's concerns aside and said they had months to figure it out. Then she shamelessly admitted that this wasn't even her first affair, as she'd slept with another man when she was 29. She told affair partner she was sick of having to act like the good housewife, and I was tired of being around a boring man like myself that made her feel old. And if it wasn't for me being so financially stable, she would have left me long ago. Even her affair partner asked what about her plan is with her kids. Her exact words were, "He can have them." She didn't even want to be around our kids anymore, because she thought they liked me better, and she'd soon be having her do-over baby anyway. I very nearly threw the laptop on the floor in my motel room because I was so disgusted, but I contained myself. Drank a few beers from a six-pack, got some dinner at the diner, and watched a movie. After that, I spent half the night just laying in bed and thinking till I finally fell asleep. I thought I knew my wife so well. I loved her and would have given her all I had to give. But in the end, some people are just evil, and you can never really know who they are until they reveal their true self. I made up my mind right then to destroy her in a divorce. I'm normally a very kind and calm man, but get me angry enough and I can become your worst nightmare. I went to see a law firm for divorce lawyers the next day and asked for the meanest lawyer they had. I live in an at-fault state, so my wife was screwed the moment I had her affair on camera. The lawyer was initially apprehensive that I wanted to hire him so quickly, until I explained my situation in more detail. I even showed him some of the video footage, and that's when he got a devilish grin and we shook hands. He said he would start right away, because this was the kind of case divorce lawyers love to dig their teeth into. I had my wife served a few weeks later on a day I was working from home, and the kids were in school. The eldest was in kindergarten, and the youngest in preschool. The papers were delivered right to my wife's hands by the local sheriff. The camera caught it all. She looked scared while she opened the envelope, read the contexts, and she lost her mind. She came running into my office to scream at me, but I remained cool and calm the whole time. I was already completely mentally checked out of our marriage. My wife wanted to argue. I just told her I had made up my mind, and I wanted her out of my house.
I'm the only one who's ever paid into the mortgage. She screamed at me that I can't do this to her, and then actually threatened to tell people I beat her if I take her to court, and get me fired from my job to boot. I told her to go right ahead and make up any lie she wants. It won't help her. It's not like she wasn't planning on screwing me over, since she's pregnant with a fair partner's baby anyway. She went wide-eyed and asked me how much I know. I just said I knew enough, and told her once again that I wanted her to leave. She refused and said it was as much her house as it was mine, then locked herself in the bedroom again. I saw on the bedroom cameras her having a meltdown, then pulling out a phone and calling the police. She was acting like she was in complete panic, but there was a huge smile on her face while she was doing it. She was quite the actress. I'd have believed that performance over the phone in a heartbeat if I didn't already know she was a liar. I waited for police with the front door wide open and told them to come right in when they arrived. They were initially hot-blooded and ready for a showdown, but the house was clean and there were no signs of any sort of fight. My wife came running out of the bathroom and grabbed the vest of one of the officers, while crying and saying I was a maniac. I asked one of the other officers to let me show them the evidence of what was really going on, and he agreed, which really startled my wife, as she was not aware that I had recorded her. I showed the officer the footage from the cameras on a laptop of my wife, saying she'd make up stuff to ruin my life, and then footage from the living room after she ran out of my office into the master bedroom down the hall, and then the footage from the camera in the bedroom of her calling the police and lying. I had recorded it all, and from multiple angles no less, and even though she claimed to the police I'd hit her, there were not only no marks on her, but the cameras all around the house showed a completely different story. Then I handed the police a thumb drive and said it had all the video footage they needed of her calling them under false pretenses. My wife, even in the face of all this, stuck to her lie of saying I was an abuser, and even tried to say the recordings were illegal and therefore inadmissible. But I pointed out they are legal because they were security cameras inside of my own home, and not only recorded in public. My wife looked to the police and told them to do something, to which they did. She was the one put in handcuffs, and she started bawling like a child. I could only sit there shaking my head. This was once the woman I had loved for so many years. I thought she was a wonderful, intelligent, and endearing person. I couldn't have been more wrong. As the police took her away, she screamed that they couldn't do this to her, but didn't fight back much. Otherwise, resisting arrest would have been added to her charges. I then shut down all her credit cards that were in my name, and stopped any future payments into the joint bank account, so she had to use entirely her own money to bail herself out of jail. She'd saved plenty all those years, and she was still working while the mortgage was only on me, so she was anything but broke. She came back for her car, which I'd taken the liberty of packing a few of her suitcases, full of her clothes and some other things, and left the key on the seat. So she wasn't even able to come back into the house. My wife's parents did come to speak to me a day after she bailed herself out of jail. Initially, they only had the backward story she told them, which was basically the same thing she tried to tell police. Her father especially was ready to attack me. Old as he is, he's big and strong. But when I asked him if he knew anything about my wife's affair or her pregnancy, he looked very surprised and gave me the chance to explain myself. I pulled out the laptop again to show my in-laws what I recorded. When they found out the truth, they were disgusted and said they couldn't believe this person was their daughter. They apologized to me and said they'd keep in touch to help out with the kids. Then they called my wife on speaker right in front of me and confronted her about her lies. She tried to double down till they said they were right with me and saw the recordings. They knew everything and wanted her out of their house immediately. She tried to backpedal, but my in-laws said they did not raise her to be a selfish, adulterous female dog that would try to frame her own husband, and she was no longer their daughter. They disowned her over the phone right then and there, and then hung up before my wife could say anything else. She tried to call back, but they ignored her every attempt. And when they got home, not only was she gone, but she destroyed several things around their house, which my mother-in-law was in tears about. I still consider my ex's parents my in-laws, because they still drop by from time to time to see their grandchildren. But my ex is effectively dead to us all. My wife later came back with her affair partner in tow to pack her things. The affair partner wouldn't even come into the house, and my wife refused to speak a word to me while gathering her remaining things. She knew there were cameras everywhere, and she'd damn herself more if she tried anything else. I wasn't alone either, as my sister and brother-in-law were there to help keep an eye on her. Brother-in-law made sure to keep his eye on affair partner from the window. My wife was still packing when the kids got home, and she made no attempt to speak to them either, not even when our youngest cried for her. Before leaving, she did take a few of the photos we had of each other from our wedding off the wall and threw them onto the floor to break them. I think she was expecting a reaction out of me, because the way she looked at me while doing it. But since I didn't say anything, she just took the last of her bags and walked out the door. After she was gone, I had to call my elderly mother to come stay with me for a while, because I couldn't take care of my kids alone. I couldn't take a lot of time off work, and I didn't have a lot of daycare options either. I also ordered DNA tests for my kids. I was sure they were mine, but several people told me that, just in case I had to know. Thankfully, yes, both of my children are mine, and yes, I did get tested for STIs. I'm clean, so no worries there. About a week later, my wife showed back up at my door saying that she would agree to a clean divorce if I did as well, meaning she'd have gotten half of everything if I had agreed. But I said no to her face. There was some fighting back and forth, and she more or less admitted to finding out the law in this state was not on her side. We met, got engaged, got married, and lived our whole lives in this state. There was no way she could get out of taking a major loss unless I agreed to settle, which I did not. Then I said she betrayed me, our kids, her parents, and practically everyone by having an affair. I then slammed the door in her face. She left quietly, and I didn't see her again until court. A few months later in divorce court, my wife was quite pregnant by then. She'd gotten a lawyer. Affair partner was nowhere to be seen. I expected her to lie to the judge, which she started a few times. But I had enough video evidence to refute any lies, so she didn't really stand a chance. So instead, she tried to drag out the divorce by simply refusing to cooperate and making various demands. She wanted most of my savings for starters, and she wanted a long list of other things I own, and she wanted me to buy out her half of the house, even though she never paid into it. On my end, I was pushing for full custody of the kids, and to get her name off of the house deed. I had video evidence to back up how she said she didn't really care for our children anymore either, and how she said she would make up lies. My wife tried to stall and repeatedly change her demands, but the judge didn't let her keep dragging things out. This being an at-fault state meant that she was entitled to very little, since she was the adulterer, and her attempting to frame me only made her case even worse. In the end, she lost all custody of her kids and walked away with nothing more than her belongings, what could be considered a fair financial settlement considering the circumstances, and the car I'd previously bought for her. The title was in my name, but I signed it over without care as part of the settlement. She made no attempt to even speak to our kids during the entire divorce anyway, so I got full custody. The house is entirely mine now, and I'm completely free of her. My now ex-wife did try to keep up with her lies about me to others before and during the divorce, but my sister spread the word around of my wife's infidelity, and soon all my mutual friends cut her off when they realized who was telling the truth. She and her affair partner left town together after the divorce ended. I hear affair partner wasn't fired, but he was transferred. Where? I don't know. But I do know my ex had to go with him. They could have transferred him and my ex to freezing Greenland for all I care. I'm just happy they've both left. My ex should have had her do-over baby by now, and I hope it was worth it to her. This is not what I thought I'd be posting to Reddit, after just talking about my wife releasing a bunny where a hawk could get it. But many of the comments I previously got about how my wife was acting made me realize I should have been paying attention to the red flags long ago. I guess I just kept rose-tinted glasses on for our entire marriage. But it's all over now. Thank you to any readers who made it through this. I know it was a lot to read, but this is my life.
You work at Lowe's? Karen says I must serve her like a puppy, and then assaults me. Partially entitled dad doesn't help much. So the title basically explains it all. For context, I worked at Lowe's during the pandemic, and that was truly a challenge. I congratulate other retail workers who survived through the ordeal, and thank all healthcare workers and first responders, as life wouldn't be the same without you guys. Now let's get on to the story. For context, I would have posted this on r/Lowe's. However, I felt like this deserved the entitled person post. I, a 24 male, was 21 when this happened. At Lowe's, you must serve any and every customer with their bullshit smart customer service, which during the COVID made it even harder. The company was a shit show, and quite frankly still is, because their upper management makes any and all associates bow down to Karen customers while refusing to help any employees. It was Sunday night, near the end of the summer. I was grateful I had a few hours until the end of shift, until Karen shows up, and buys a large portable air conditioner unit. She drives one of those small landscape-type dump trucks. This is important later. One of my buddies in our department was outside gathering carts. As if you're not helping a customer near the end of the night, you're outside doing carts. There are no customers around our area, and all of our restock has been fulfilled for now. As I'm helping him gather carts, we're just talking about life in general. Good times and how we'd like to get out of this job and into a good career. As we're gathering the carts that were in the back of the parking lot to push up to the front, we see the middle-aged Karen just start yelling at us, saying, "You too," and snaps at us. Then she starts waving at us like we couldn't already see her. She also whistles to get our attention, as if we didn't hear her. She starts yelling at us why weren't we at the door or helping her inside, despite another associate who already helped her with the purchase. For some context, the other associate who helped her couldn't deadlift the air conditioner by herself, as Karen felt entitled. Other associate was small and petite, a 19 female, who, after a while, cried in the break room because Karen had thrown a fit because she couldn't carry it by herself, and used a flat cart to take it outside. We get over to Karen to help her get her air conditioner in. She wants to make it into the dump truck. No ratchet straps, tie-downs, or anything to secure it. This is important later. She demands we pick this up and put it at neck level in this dump truck for her. As we're lifting,
My buddy says he needs to set it down because he couldn't grip it, and we reconfigure the lift. At that point, Karen looked angry at us. We start lifting again, and the Karen starts yelling at us that we're doing it wrong and will break her new unit, despite using the cut-in handles. Karen then shoves me to the ground and says,
Freak you! I'll do it myself.
My buddy helps me up as Karen closes the tailgate and nearly backs up over me and drives off. As I get up with his help, up and over me, our supervisor says he was standing in the doorway and saw it all. He informed me that the store cameras recorded it if I wanted to contact HR and tell them what occurred, though he cautioned I shouldn't pursue it because the store management would feel the store's reputation and sales would be at risk, since if I pressed charges, it would affect their revenue. He also explained they would find an excuse to fire me. He did say what I do in my off time he has no control over, suggesting I should pursue charges off the clock. I went home a few hours later to my house, as I didn't make enough to afford to live on my own. I tell my dad what happened, and he wasn't much help. My own freaking father told me I should just shrug it off and let it go. He told me I should man up and not be a little bitch, even though my own body was violated by a middle-aged Karen, and I shouldn't pursue it, as I don't have proof of and other stuff. I had to work from 10 to 6 the next day, and I found out from an appliance associate that Karen came back around 8 a.m. and screamed at customer service, and her new AC unit was broken, and she wanted a full refund. The store manager gave her a refund, and despite all, she berated, harassed, and assaulted a few associates. The store and company don't have your back, and they'll sue anything to retain a customer. I'm glad I left there a few months later. Lowe's has progressively gotten worse, and I work in another sector. Also, the 19-year-old associate left shortly after that. She was in college, despite working at a Lowe's. I heard she now has a job doing something she likes, and graduated. As for Karen, if you're out there, screw you, and I hope the world gives you hell. Neighbor takes money off of my property and calls me rude. Friends and I were headed to the movies the other day. They carpooled to my house, and I then drove from there. At the theater, my friend reaches into her pocket for money and realizes her cash is missing. We search around and in the car, and it cannot be found. At dinner, she asks me to check my security camera to see if she dropped it in my driveway. I look but cannot tell. However, I see there is a video 5 minutes later. It shows a car pull up, and a woman jump out of the passenger seat, walk into my driveway and pick up the cash, hop back into the car, and drive off. I decide to post on the Book of Faces in my POA group the following, hoping someone can help. My friend was visiting today and dropped some cash in the driveway. I have a video of a lady in a white car get out and come into my driveway and pick it up. I have pictures of the person in car. If anyone has any information, please let me know. This was a lot of money to her. Thank you. I refrained from posting her picture because those things cannot be undone. A bit later, a lady responds, "I'll come by tomorrow." And that's it. Nothing else. Cue the next afternoon, she's come to my door. This boomer Karen starts off the conversation in an angry way, telling me my Facebook post was very rude because I posted that I have a picture of the person. And what was I going to do? Call the police? And I told her she was lucky I didn't post her picture, and that she was in the wrong by coming onto my property and taking something that wasn't hers. I mean, she took money from my property and she's mad at me? She said it was barely on my property. Has she forgotten I have the video? And she was waiting to see if anyone reported it, but is mad somebody did. And I told her by her logic, if she leaves a bike in her driveway, I can grab it, take it home, and keep it if no one reports it. She continued to argue, and I decided I wasn't going to waste any more time on this lady. The best part? I found out she lives right next door. What a great welcome to the neighborhood, isn't that right? Entitled X ghosted my friend and then demands a room in our house. This isn't my ex, but my best friend's ex. She and I have been friends for years and live together now. And now we live with my parents, who adore her like their own daughter. I got her permission to post this. My friend, 30 female, came to the US from Latin America at 19 as a student. She also started dating her ex, who was a 29-year-old male, after many years of hanging out with each other, both during vacations and online. I knew them both since high school, and they seemed good together. She tried to convince him to move together for a few years before their breakup. He was living with his parents who wanted him to leave. At this point, she had already finished college and had a job in the US that granted her a visa. He had quit college and worked part-time. From what I can gather, he didn't want to leave his parents' place because free food and no rent. So instead, she asked me if I wanted to move with her so we could afford a bigger place. I said yes, and we moved together, adopted a cat and a dog, and pretty much became Grace and Frankie. Around the start of the pandemic, things got bad for them. This is what I was told and what I saw. They never talked or hang out or anything. It was in a breakup at that time myself, so I wasn't really on top since I had my own issues. But my friend cried so much. She didn't even get a happy birthday. After a year of no contact, she assumed the relationship was over. She changed all her social media to single, which he could see, took him off her emergency contacts at work and at her doctor's, and just moved on with her life. This year, my stepdad's health has gone downhill, and my mom needs help caring for him. She works full-time as a therapist, I work from home, and my job is very flexible. So I put the idea of all of us living together, and I'll care for my dad. Eventually, I'll care for my mom, too. My mom loved the idea and asked my bestie if she wanted to move with us, too, so we could all be together. And also because at this point, I can't see myself not being in the same house as her. We've come to terms in being single ladies. Heck, we've joked about one of us should adopt and we become parent-aunt dynamic. And now the joke is more serious since I'm considering it, and she's incredibly supportive. No, we're not dating. She's straight, I'm bi, we're just incredibly close after all the BS we've lived through together. We found a perfect house. 4-bedroom, 2.5 bathrooms, enough space, a yard, and everything we need. And we got it after a bunch of difficulties and arrangements. Since I don't have immediate plans for adopting yet, I have a ton of paperwork and years of planning ahead. We made the extra room into our office gaming hub. We both work at the same place. Totally not on purpose, they were hiring and we both needed visas. And as proud first-time homeowners, we posted pictures. Her ex, who by this time has been missing in action for 3 years, messaged her saying he was so excited to move into the new house. She told him this was her house with me and my parents. He said since they were a couple, she should kick me and my parents out so he could move in. I want to point out that my parents bought the house. We, friend and I, will pay them our parts over the years. And if she decides to move out, I'll finish paying and I'll buy her part out. This is all in paper and signed, so she obviously told him he was not moving in with us, and that he ghosted her, so there was no relationship. He went on a tirade that he never broke up with her, that she was abandoning him, that she never cared about him, and so on. I got angry, took the phone from her, and told him he could live in a bear cave for all I care, but to leave my friend alone, and our house. He went ballistic and began calling us some names, referring to the LGBTQ+ community. That would probably get this post flagged, so I'll leave it to your imagination. My friend started crying, and I was absolutely done with him. I never thought he was abusive, but my friend confessed to me that this was not new. He had always had issues with the two of us living together, and accused her often of cheating on him with me. We ended the call and I told her she needed to block him for her own sanity's sake. She deserves so much better than this man-child. She got me to leave my abusive ex when I was in high school. She took me to the hospital when he beat me up and called my parents. My friend is family, and I'll be dead before I let some bastard with commitment issues make her suffer. Since he's gone on a major campaign in our friend group to say my friend abandoned him and left him homeless because apparently he canceled his lease after he saw we bought a house, he also claims we're lesbian Satanists that probably abuse our pets and are mooching off my parents. Most of my friends know the story and know my friend and I moved in together at first out of necessity. Then we just don't see ourselves not living together. So, yeah, my friend's ex is a nutcase, and if he ever gets close to her again,
I will personally give him a vasectomy.
Update. Hey everyone, a bit quick on the update, but some people asked if our friends knew where the ex was hiding for 3 years. And I was actually curious, since I was down for the count at work today, I had time to check with my friends and find out more. Apparently my bestie did ask them, but they didn't know. From what they tell me, he kinda got back into everyone's life in the last year or so. But he was part of the group because they were bestie friends, not really his. I don't personally know many of his own friends, to be fair. I did track down the ex's sister thanks to social media and poked her for info. She's very nice and always treated my bestie right. I told her what her brother did, and her response was very, very interesting. Apparently, the ex was dating other girls until his parents decided to move outside the U.S. He's now living in a friend's couch. The last she heard was a couple of days past when they went out for coffee. He was saying he got this brand new house and was going to be moving in this week. As far as she knew, my bestie begged him to take her back and let her live in his house. I did correct her and said that no, bestie is living with me and my parents in our new house. Her reaction was, of course he lied, and just thanked her for letting me know he was BSing. Aside from that, I do want to report we are safe. He doesn't know where we live, and most people don't, because we're not really ready to open Pandora's box and have friends come over. We also need time to figure out who we want in the know. We won't be going to the police unless something serious happens, just because this is technically not a crime, but we're going to keep recordings and print text conversations. If he tries anything, we have all our papers in order. And just in case, I plan to contact our company's HR so they know the situation. The company we work for can provide us free legal counsel if things get bad. Thank you for watching today's video. If you enjoy, like, subscribe, leave a comment down below, and check out my links in the description below. I'll see you all next time. Hasta la pasta.